What? What? You guys found me streaming? Oh my god, this is the stupidest background to pop up on. I'll be back right now as I start this because I puppy right here. Well, she's not my puppy, but like she's like my dog at this point. Yeah, we'll start in a moment. It's just gonna be listening for the first few minutes. Like that. I'll be back in a moment. I made myself some oatmeal. And we'll start right now. The first video we're gonna watch is Fear the Depths. I forget by who that channel is. By. Sorry for being all sidetracked right now. There we go. Yeah, it's called Fear the Depths. It's not the one on screen. Here we go. By Jacob
3,000 years
Jeller.
ago, a monster seizes 6 sailors from the ship of Odysseus and throws them down.
I have to be in and out of the tab because I think this one can get TOS.
Historian writes about a sea beast 1.5 miles in circumference.
Okay. Okay, JC Penny.
2 men in a rowboat are attacked by a creature with limbs dozens of feet long. 16 years ago, the animal is caught on camera. 120 years ago.
So essentially, the premise of this scary stream is like, you know, just the environment, you know? Like, there's scary places you can go to, right? Like, atmospheric wise, it's like haunted houses. Then there's like, you know, enchanted forests. Then there's just like, you know, also things you have to fear about when it comes to the environment, like global warming, right? And that was talked about yesterday. Today, I think we're gonna focus more about like hauntings and other facts about the environment unrelated to global warming. Oh, I said warning. Oh my god, warming. Is it warning too? Right? Either or.
A 10,000-pound faceless mass of flesh arrives on the shore.
Yeah. Also, I forgot. I need to.
80 years ago, an English author writes of a beautiful decaying giant that lies on the coast. 50 years ago, ocean researchers attempt to pull up their anchor and discover that something no one has ever seen has swallowed it. 18 years ago, the waters on the edge of India draw back and reveal structures outside of living memory. A minute later, those waters smash back into the land. 6 years ago, a glacier collapses and releases a part of itself.
Yeah, it's some scary stuff.
Months ago,
okay, but this is more scientific.
To perilously low levels and uncovers a crime from a different century. The history of our relationship with the deep is written in unknowables. Time and again, we declare something impossible, only to discover it's already happened. Confine a phenomenon to myth until it proves itself beyond all doubt. I am not here to lecture you on what does not exist. I am here to tell you what lurks just out of view, beyond our knowledge, and below the waves.
So, if I remember, this one gets into true crime a little bit. But yeah, that's why I have to like block some of this stuff out of view at some point.
It's hard to define just how many myths are, in one way or another, about the Kraken. The giant tentacled beast's earliest specific mention may have been King Sverre of Norway in the year 1180. But what of Scylla, the sea monster from the Odyssey, with 12 writhing legs, many screaming heads, and countless fangs?
We never hear of that one.
Leviathan, a
that one's kind of iffy, right? I don't know, my mom and dad never talk about it. You know, do my friends.
Some of our earliest and most influential
when it comes to like, I guess like influences to what the Kraken is.
Mentions, but whole encounters with similar sounding abominations. 600 years after King Sverre, Eric Pontoppidan fleshed out his country's history with the Kraken in his book, The Natural History of Norway.
Wow, okay.
This wasn't a speculative work, according to Pontoppidan. The book declares itself a particular and accurate account of the temperature of the air, the different soils, waters, vegetables.
You know, that's crazy, because like back then, books would just declare themselves as whatever, and it's like insane that I don't know, like the books nowadays can kind of still do the same, except there's gonna be more of a critical eye, right?
The Kraken. This creature is the largest and most surprising of all the animal kingdom. He says that fishermen may sense the presence of the creature by an abundance of fish, but if the water seems to grow shallower, they need to get the hell out of there before an enormous monster comes up to the surface of the water. He writes that no human has ever seen its true body.
Uh-huh.
Its back alone is 1.5 miles in circumference, that it at first looks like a number of small islands, that the horns on its head stand as tall as
See,
ships.
that's like
When
poetic.
it sinks back down below, it causes a whirlpool that sucks the
Mm-hmm.
surrounding sea down with it.
Okay.
As a kid, I was obsessed with the idea of the Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
I pored over illustrations of tentacles grappling with warships. I read every myth and legend I could find. I wrote a report on it for my school, elementary school, and still have vivid memories of waking up in the middle of the night and writing furiously, my waking and sleeping brain.
Underwater myths, the Kraken, giant squid.
Since assessing any individual story's truthfulness was well beyond me, since every piece of literature held basically an equal amount of historical possibility, it was easy to decide which ones were my favorite. It all came down to size. Modest krakens, ones that ate 1 or 2 sailors, wrestled with individual
That is
boats,
interesting, huh?
Fine. Interesting, even.
There are quite a few
Tentacles
depictions of like the Kraken that differ.
were undeniably neat.
Some like nowadays look are described to be like giant squid,
Vast,
but like back then they looked like an octopus.
I wanted a god that would emerge like the birth of a new continent that could plummet down further than we could ever follow. I wanted something eldritch years before I ever learned the word. And the Kraken worked for that. Not just because of its fabled enormity, but because it seemed impossible to disprove. Sure, we didn't have photographic evidence, but we had all these stories, and the deep sea could hide so many secrets. Nothing could suppress my desire to believe in big things underwater. Reading about the sailors of centuries ago feels a lot like reading about astronauts. They're totally
Right?
isolated.
Honestly, it is. They're kind of the same.
One that virtually no one else would ever see, and one that would kill them without passion.
And it still kind of is like that, because like if you think about it, there's not that many ships sailing the sea at once. It's not like traffic, right? Like it's like what's like the last time in the news you hear like ship traffic is through the roof, ships are stalling, without it being like something having to do with the economy and the sailors going on strike or something like that, or some weird obstruction in some canal happening, right?
And having people tell you,
usually it's those ladders that end up happening, and not like, oh, there's too much traffic or whatever.
At sea. For example,
that puts to a perspective that like we really don't know much about the sea, right? The sea is just like a fucking
they managed to lasso the thing,
just
but
open frontier
its flesh on board.
that we neglect to explore.
The French Academy of Sciences, where a zoologist informed them that they had nothing but a rotten bit of sea plant. He said
wow.
that the existence of the animal they described would contradict the great laws of harmony and equilibrium which have sovereign rule over living nature. They lasso a squid and this living nature.
Let's see the quote. The great laws of harmony and equilibrium which have sovereign
rule
over living nature. Wow, what a quote.
They lasso a squid, and this dork just tells them they probably grabbed some seaweed? There are plenty of these types of stories.
Right.
The existence of some kind of big squid was well known enough that it even makes an appearance in the distinctly not sci-fi Moby Dick. They see a pulpy mass furlongs in length with innumerable long arms radiating from its center.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until 23 years after Moby Dick that anyone managed to obtain convincing proof.
You know, nowadays, I guess like people talk about fucking the what is it called? It's like a creepypasta at this point, right? Or it's like a cryptid. What the fuck is this? Oh yeah, the other day, yeah, we were talking about Antarctica and how fucking disgusting people compose themselves in Antarctica, because apparently like in US bases there's like a high amount of like rape, and that's like fucked up. That's what we were talked about yesterday. And it's something like not that many people know about, and I even didn't know about. And that the NSF and other companies, I guess, conspired to kind of hide. But anyhow, what am I searching? Oh yeah, yeah. It's a fucking creepypasta. It resembles a large cluster of organisms. The black carpet is related to single-celled organisms. That is said to be like this huge ass organism that lives under the water. Oops, wrong one. I don't know why that one reloaded. But yeah, that's what I feel like the modern Kraken is today.
A fisherman named Theophilus Picot
Without it being too popular, right?
Rowboat, and he smacked it with an oar, only to have the something reveal itself as a massive tentacled creature that reportedly attacked the boat with its beak and threw its arms over the entire vessel. Picot then grabbed a hatchet and attacked it, fighting it off and hurriedly rowing back to shore through the hundreds of yards of ink that it shot out.
Wow.
And this would have probably ended like every other sailor's unbelievable tales of ocean monsters, except Picot didn't come back empty-handed. He had severed one of the animal's tentacles with his axe and gave it to a museum. The tentacle was 19 feet long.
Holy shit.
The animal Picot fought was not Scylla or the Leviathan or Norway's mile-and-a-half-long kraken, but it was a squid, and it was giant. It was a giant squid. Architeuthis ducks. Finally, no one could deny that the animal was real. It wasn't just legend. It absolutely.
You know, and even then, nowadays we still have iffy data on that animal. Like it's like we don't know how they proliferate or if they do proliferate.
People have found a handful of Architeuthis corpses, but the first time it was caught on video was in 2006.
Yeah, it was pretty shortly ago. Holy shit.
Since then. It is a
in the grand scheme of things, like that was like what, 20 years ago?
40 feet long,
17 years ago?
Pounds, and the number of people who have seen one alive could probably fit in this room. And if sailors have something in common with astronauts, Architeuthis has even more in common with an alien. Wendy Williams writes, in many ways,
also, I like how he sets up the atmosphere, right? He makes the ocean
spends its time in a dark void
kind of seem like, you know, like a frontier, like just straight up.
Encounters with it were almost indistinguishable from alien sightings, fleeting glimpses that leave people raving about impossible sights to a disbelieving audience. And its biology is distinct enough to feel completely alien as well.
Its tentacles
of a giant squid's brain is in its tentacles. Individual arms can move and maybe even think after being severed from the main body. It could be smart. It could be genius. Because we've had so few encounters with Architeuthis, we can really only guess at its brain power. Even if we did have extended contact, how would we ascertain?
It tends to be that squid are not that, or like less smarter, right? Hold up, let me search this up. I believe the squids are slightly less intelligent than octopuses, and it's octopi, but okay. Cuttlefish for various species of squid are more sociable. Yeah. See, that's what I'm referring to, I guess. But it is coming from Wikipedia. But I mean, Wikipedia nowadays is like better, right? Because like it actually has like. Oh, wrong one. It actually has like
that we can intuit some level of
some sort of like
backing because we've had
with its information
with them. Like intelligent alien species, could they have seen what we're up to and simply decided they don't want to get involved? Of course, we don't even know that all those sailors' encounters with tentacled sea beasts were.
That's an interesting point he brought up right now.
They could have been with.
But like them not wanting to contact us because they just have no interest.
The giant squid's a shorter but far beefier relative. They could have seen the absolutely bizarre big fin squid, Magna pinna, or even the giant Pacific octopus, Enteroctopus dofilani, which can theoretically grow past 600 pounds.
Wow.
There was a time when some educated scientists of the Victorian age believed it impossible that life could actually exist thousands of feet below
the
ocean under crushing pressure and absolute darkness. They were incorrect, of course. As deep as we can go in the ocean, we find life. And it's hard not to look at our history of underestimating what the ocean holds and wonder about other myths. The giant squid exists. How about Namazu or Bakunawa, undersea beasts of Japan and the Philippines respectively, which both cause earthquakes with their movement?
Mm-hmm.
How about the Loch Ness Monster, hidden for centuries within Scotland's peaty depths? Or hell, why not a
The
megalodon
Loch Ness
or other
monster,
prehistoric sharks? Is it so unreasonable that an animal that's proved
A
itself through
prehistoric
millions
shark
of
would be
years
like the
of
goblin
surviving
shark.
the
I
coast
mean,
would
they
be able to
exist.
stay out of our way? This isn't even
Mm-hmm.
really a theoretical question. In his book Monsters
Mm-hmm.
of the Sea, which I will reference throughout this video, Richard Ellis tells the story of scientists
Mm-hmm.
off the coast of Hawaii conducting deep sea observations. Preparing to leave, they hauled in one of their anchors, which had been hanging out about 500 feet below, and brought with it a 14-foot shark that neither they nor anyone else had ever seen before. The megamouth shark, named because
Yeah, it's
anyone's
mouth.
guess, really, is not a new species. It's been around basically as long as any other shark. And yet we found our first one in 1976. There is simply so
I mean, they
much
weren't
in the
logged
sea
because
that
like
even the
they're like
largest
hard to,
creatures are
right?
dwarfed by the amount of nothing behind them.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually a concept called deep sea gigantism.
Yeah.
A paradoxical phenomenon.
No,
that
we have
in
whales.
abyss
They're
where
proof
food
of
is
that.
scarcest and pressure is most severe, organisms get bigger. Isopods 2 feet long, spider crabs with a 12-foot arm span.
Jesus.
There are still so many questions that remain about what and why and how, that the line between fiction and fact feels blurrier than normal. Is any given author making something up? Or are
When it comes to the sea, anything goes, in my opinion.
And fauna? We'll later find
Like,
out.
if you were to write something about the sea, it's like, you're smart. Like, holy crap. Like, it's not that many people write about the sea. Well, I mean, they do probably write about the sea, but like, it's more like, oh, the ocean waves, blah, blah, blah. Not like about like the deep sea. Like, there is this book I read a while ago in elementary school that was like about like this utopian society underwater or something, but like it rarely ever went like, oh, all they mentioned is like, don't go too deep or else you'll never come back up. You know what I mean? That's all they mentioned like once. I just can't remember that book's name.
Classic, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Immediately after a conversation where one crew member scoffs at the idea of a kraken, their submarine
All I remember is the book's front was blue.
Devilfish. Captain Nemo grabs an axe and gets to chopping, cutting off 7 of its arms. The creature then disappears in a cloud of ink, just like Picot's Squidward. Life imitates art.
Yeah.
Perhaps hoping to predict a future discovery, many science fiction stories have tackled the idea of extraterrestrial marine biology, what may lie under the oceans of other planets.
Aliens.
And, credit to them, these stories often feel more plausible than our other guesses at alien life. An exemplary model of this kind of world construction is the indie gem In Other Waters, which builds an entire functioning ecosystem through little more than text descriptions and HUD elements.
Okay.
Maybe it's easier for us to buy into these other worlds because our own oceans feel so full of aliens. Another sterling example of this is the game Subnautica.
Oh yeah, Subnautica is a good example.
Set on an entirely oceanic moon, Subnautica
amazing.
is a survival game.
You know, maybe I'll play this game on stream one day. I don't know.
In order to stay alive,
depends when I have time.
into the underwater map.
Because I keep on saying I'm gonna play this game, this next other game. Oh no, I'm disappearing.
Biosphere. Unlike some of its survival game ilk, Subnautica's circle of life doesn't revolve
I don't
around
need to
the
change it
player.
anymore.
Almost every plant and animal can be scanned and learned about, but most will not help you craft a better battery or stronger diving suit. The imposing reefbacks exist because they're a vital part of the moon's cycle of life, not because they're a source of resources for you to exploit. Because only a fraction of the wildlife can be corralled and harvested, Subnautica never gives the feeling like you're conquering the environment, only finding your place in it. And your place, notably, is not at the top.
Yeah. Because usually, at least what a lot of games and a lot of like actually,
start screen or main character, or
I guess like common thought. I said thought. Oh my god. Common thought is that we're like apex predators. We're not. Put us in a room next to a lion. The lion becomes the apex predator, right? Likewise, put us in the sea, and we're like just a fish.
And yet the ocean's cloudiness means it also
It's just like any other fish.
feels like it appears from nowhere. It's capable of swallowing you whole, but I've also experienced a far crueler interaction with the beast.
Uh-huh.
Occasionally, even in the depths of Subnautica, you have to climb out of your submersible and swim in the open water. In one such time, I climbed out of my sub hundreds of yards below the surface, began to swim,
Oh my god, look at that
and
thing.
heard a scream and turned around to see a leviathan devouring my empty submarine. It swam off with the shattered pieces of the vehicle, leaving me technically alive, but absolutely screwed, drowning and unreachably far
Holy
from the
shit,
surface.
he's having his gamer moment.
Subnautica is a game that triggers
He's
thalassophobia,
probably like, fuck!
a term people have likely been screaming for this entire video, a fear and or fixation on the open ocean. A peek at the thalassophobia subreddit reveals
Right?
dozens
Oh my
of
god.
bottomless pits, waves
That looks
sweeping
awesome.
past tiny portholes, and countless fish swirling in organic whirlpools. What thalassophobia doesn't quite communicate, what doesn't have a word as far as I can tell, is the misfortune of things that should remain deep underwater being brought to the surface.
Right? I don't think there is such a thing like that.
Convoluted novel Kraken centers around Billy Harrow, a museum employee whose most notable achievement is preserving the corpse of a recovered Architeuthis in formaldehyde.
Ooh, okay.
One day, Billy enters the museum to find the entire creature has disappeared into
Oh,
the
that's
city's
cool. That's a cool
underbelly.
premise.
He goes in search of the corpse and finds a world full of various cults worshipping various gods, including a squid cult. But they swear they didn't steal it. The preserved giant squid obviously holds a religious significance for the cult, but they're sure to draw a line between that specimen and the true Kraken, their actual deity. The Kraken, almost by definition, could never be captured, never be preserved, nor even fully understood. Naming, classifying Architeuthis is near blasphemous to them. The squid cult says, and I quote, "What was squidity but otherness, incomprehensibility?" And although Billy,
this guy has way too much time on his
squid lore as the rest of the cult, he can't help but feel a bit conflicted about the myth of the
the guy
preserved
streaming,
squid
right?
versus the reality of its capture. Visitors to the museum arrive with visions of legendary seafaring encounters, visions that clash with the scientific sterility of a dead squid in a vat of formaldehyde. Billy thinks, visions of an army of coils 20,000 leagues, an axe fight against a blasphemy from the deep below, a predatory meat cylinder, rope limbs unrolling.
An axe fight probably is referencing the thing we heard of earlier.
It had been nothing like that. A giant squid at the surface was a weak, disoriented, moribund thing, horrified by air, crushed by its own self. It had probably just wheezed through its siphon and palsied, a gel mass of dying.
Wow,
This
that's sad.
description makes me think of the first Architeuthis we captured on camera, accidentally hooked on a fishing boat, not an exemplary
yeah, right?
We've observed the most desperate giant squids, the starving. Real-life zoologist Clyde Roper has said the same thing. The only
That's so
ones
true,
who
right?
are the slow, the sick, and the stupid. There's a sharp distinction between the first video,
wow, that's an actual
and drowning,
deep quote,
and our subsequent recordings of its alien magnificence in the deep where it actually lives. Our pictures of it without
the slow, the
context
sick, and
are
the
gross,
stupid.
almost disrespectful. Our interactions with it on our home turf deny the squid its majesty, and Mievel's telling its godliness. But what do you do?
That is such a way to put it.
Washes up on your front doorstep.
The drowned giants.
For
Actually,
people have ventured out onto the ocean.
no, I think I watched a different one. I think I watched a different one. Hold on.
To be true.
I'll try to find it.
Your uncle almost caught a fish that was this big. Still strain credulity. Most challenging of all, though, is when the existence of the thing is not in question, but what the thing is still eludes us.
When was this?
In 1896, on the beach of Anastasia Island, just off the coast of Florida, two boys discovered a giant thing. A lump,
It was February 4th.
a blob, the remains of who knows what. They fetched the founder of the St. Augustine Historical Society, who measured the thing at 21 feet long.
Oh my god, it's the
same.
same. We're watching Nexpo's video. See, fear for things underwater. This is good. This is good.
Between 5 and 7 tons.
Alright guys, like we'll watch another one.
And rubbery and incredibly tough.
As
Richard
well,
Ellis
it is a
describes
similar
it as
one.
5
This is by
tons of
Nexpo.
protoplasm. Most mystifying of all, while the blob didn't have a head or intact limbs, or bones or organs, it did have what appeared to be stumps protruding from its mass. It had enough of these tubular stumps.
Yeah, they're
that
similar.
upon hearing
Holy
its
shit.
description, Yale zoologist Addison Verrill declared an entirely new species of cephalopod, Octopus giganteus. In 1887, Verrill wrote for the New York Herald.
The other one has true crime. This one probably does touch the stuff that's happening in Nevada.
Each arm of the animal would have
and
been
like
at least
Salt Lake.
100 feet long.
I think that's what
thick
I
as
don't
the
remember what
mast
it's
of a
called.
large
It's like the
vessel
Salt Lake
and
area.
covered in suckers. He said, "We must reflect that wherever this creature had its home,
Or is it
there
in
must be
Utah? I don't
hundreds
remember. Some
or
fucking
even
place
thousands of others of its kind,
over there.
probably of equal size. Otherwise, its race could not be kept up." In 1964, author J.G. Ballard published a short story called The Drowned Giant. The story, recently repopularized by an adaptation in Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots, tells of an enormous man's corpse that washes ashore on the beach of a village.
Oh my god.
The story's narrator, a local scientist, goes to visit the giant and watches a growing crowd interact.
Okay. Just cause like also there's petty companies out there that just like, you know, they're like, you show my shit, it's over. Your fucking copyright struck. Let's do this for the moment. Yeah.
Interact with the body, first trepidatiously, then gleefully, climbing its arms, jumping on its nose, sliding down its jaws. The giant, as mysterious as it is, becomes a sort of public gathering space. People picnic and watch the thing. Children treat it as a playground.
There's nothing like TOS, but like
isn't the particulars of his musculature, but the mere fact that he simply is.
it's just
fascinating.
you know, it's naked.
His immense scale, the huge volumes of space occupied by his arms and legs, which seem to confirm the identity of my own miniature limbs. But above all, the mere categorical fact of his existence. Whatever else in our lives might be open to doubt, the giant, dead or alive, existed in an absolute sense, providing a glimpse into a world of similar absolutes, of which we spectators on the beach were such imperfect and puny copies.
The St. Augustine monster isn't the only of its kind. 64 years later, on the coast of Tasmania, 2 men discovered another blob, 20 feet long by 18 feet wide, and somewhere between 5 and 10
A sea
tons.
monster. There's a bunch of these things referred to as blobs.
Head, bones, or structure.
They're very interesting
Almost as
creatures
inexplicable
because
as
they can't be
being
studied
a
because they literally start they start
sat on the beach for
decomposing.
a year
Yeah,
and
that's the word.
half without meaningfully decomposing.
Yeah.
The only thing it lost in that span of time was a layer of fine, greasy hair. Apparently, it didn't even have a smell. Bill Mollison, an Australian biologist and one of the investigators, said, "One tends always to reject the fact that an animal is unknown. One is always seeking some explanation, and you try and add up everything, but this one does not add up." The more I looked, the more I was convinced that it conformed to no known animal. As time goes by in Ballard's story, fewer people visit the giant. Whereas it had once been near beautiful with a Grecian profile and resemblance to sculpture, the time on the beach
Oh my god. Just,
ages the giant. It's
like it blurs out whatever the fuck it shows. Like I don't know. Like I'm not, you know, letting things up to like
continues to surrender to that all-demanding system of time. His face hints at a growing corruption to come. There is still no indication of where the giant came from, other than simply out of...
Dude, oh my god, there's a frame you can see that shit. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh my god.
the sea. 1968 saw the emergence of another globster, as did 1970 and 1988. As Ellis writes,
hold up, let me show you. This is actually
one of the core similarities between each blob is they're nearly impossible to cut. The one in 1988 was described as like trying to cut a car tire, and the Tasmanian one from the 60s broke 3 blades of a pathologist's knife and only gave up tiny fragments of itself. But samples of it were retrieved. Today, due to a combination of preservation and the blob's inherent durability, we can examine the old material with new technology.
Yeah, that's good.
One day, in Ballard's story, the scientist comes back and the head of the giant has been removed. He is relieved.
For 5 seconds, watch.
Each day previous, the creature became less elegant, less marvelous, more covered in the dirt and grime of our world.
Despite his immense size, the bruises and dirt that covered his body made him appear merely human in scale, his vast dimensions only increasing his vulnerability. As each of the limbs was chopped off, first at the knee and elbow, and then at shoulder and thigh, the carcass resembled that of any headless sea animal, whale or whale shark.
The community claims the giant as its own abandoned site. Graffiti and carvings mock its once clear skin. Its hand and foot become material for fertilizer and cattle food. A shack simmers its blubber. The giant's body, in parts, remains, but the giant as a concept disappears from memory. Electron microscopy has revealed that chunks of the unidentified blobs have basically the same molecular makeup as whales. They bear little resemblance to a cephalopod, octopus giganteus, or otherwise. Even before modern analysis, many of the original scientists revised their observations. Verrill himself, who proposed the octopus, said later that the St. Augustine monster was some part of a sperm whale. Although this theory would require a sperm whale to have features that have never been observed before. As time passes, the mystery of the blobs are smoothed over, nominally explained, though never quite answered. The most recent blob of a similar type appeared on a Chilean beach in 2003, a full 14 tons and nearly 40 feet across.
A lot of people theorize it's like a whale carcass, or it's like a bunch of blubber, literally.
It, too, was ultimately deemed to be some remnant of a sperm whale. As the drowned giant gradually disappears from the beach, it reappears throughout the town. Thigh bones frame the meat market, a carnival displays the right hand. Pieces of its ribs frame a garden, though the ribs are misidentified as the jaws of a whale. The village assimilates the giant and scrubs away its otherworldliness. Even the enormous penis of the giant, which is preserved and dragged along with a circus, is normalized to some extent.
The irony is that it is wrongly identified as that of a whale, and indeed most people, even those who first saw him cast up on the shore after the storm, now remember the giant, if at all, as a large sea beast.
I will not, as much as I want to, deny the findings of electron microscopy. If the best data we have says that these vast...
Why have a Christmas tree?
In fact, some part of a whale...
The Christmas tree has been saving me since...
But I am not so
2020.
Uncategorizable to cordon off.
I'm pretty sure it's in. What? Oh yeah, that's a different window.
The unknown until it becomes
Need
the
not
known.
be afraid. What is this? Oh yeah.
Tales of a giant squid were laughed off and rationalized until faced with undeniable proof. The megamouth shark has existed for millennia and yet simultaneously didn't exist until we dragged one up in 1976. 126 years ago, a 5-ton headless, limbless blob of protoplasm washed up on a beach in Florida. On that beach, the creature was a gigantic octopus of a species heretofore never seen. A century later, we know the St. Augustine monster came from a whale. A century from now, we may know differently yet again.
Yeah, right?
Of course, a century from now, mysterious blobs will likely be the least of the things released from the waters of our world.
Just before the end?
One particular image I've never been able to get out of my mind came just before the devastating tsunami in the Indian Ocean in 2004. A warning sign for tsunamis is the draw back, when the entire ocean seems to pull away from the land before crashing back in. And in 2004, during this drawback, just before waves dozens of feet tall would strike the shore, people on the coast of the Indian state of Tamil Nadu saw something emerge from under the water. Dark lines of stone arose out of the receding sea and sand, not random boulders, but architecture. Just south of where these ruins were spotted stand the remnants of the ancient city of Mahabalipuram, a city fabled to have once been much grander than the few monuments that remain today. Just before the tsunami hit, witnesses unlucky enough to be on the shore caught a glimpse of the true scale of ancient Mahabalipuram, the archaeological vision of a lifetime at an impossibly high cost. I have to wonder if future generations will have the same experience, living in a world where the oceans have swallowed our present-day coasts. Imagine a tsunami in 2150, humans seeing the oceans.
I'm sure the cameraman was saved.
Disaster to expose.
Hopefully.
I don't know, like a drowned Taco Bell or something. Those same swelling seas are also driving another phenomenon: the increased frequency of glacier calving. Calving is the term for glaciers or icebergs fragmenting, coming apart and falling into the sea. It is a somewhat inevitable process, the result of the constant erosive power of the waves and impossible weight of ice that is nevertheless accelerated due to our warming planet.
Almost forming a different glacier.
Things falling into the ocean, not emerging from it. Occasionally, the two go hand in hand. Nature writer Robert McFarlane wrote about an experience he had near the Knud Rasmussen Glacier in Iceland, in which he watched a veritable city of ice detach from its mother glacier and plummet into the water below. And then, the calving reveals something more. And then something terrible happens, which is that out of the water where the city has fallen, there upsurges, or so it seems from where we are standing, right to the summit of the calving face itself, a black, shining pyramid, sharp at its prow, thrusting and glistening, made of a substance that has to be ice, but looks like no ice we have seen before. Something that resembles what I imagine meteorite metal to be. Something that has come from so deep down in time that it has lost all color. And we are dancing and swearing and shouting, appalled and thrilled to have seen this repulsive, exquisite thing rise up that should never have surfaced. This star-dropped berg surge that has taken 3 minutes and 100,000 years to conclude. Though McFarlane's sighting was nowhere near as dangerous nor shadowed by tragedy as that of Mahabalipuram, I can't help but feel a connection between them. The sea relinquishing what's hidden just before the end. This thread continues into the unlikeliest of places. For instance, the landlocked Salt Lake City. As reported by Christopher Flavelle for the New York Times, the largest city in Utah is sitting next to a, quote, environmental nuclear bomb. The eponymous.
There we go, in Utah. See?
While the oceans begin to rise, the Salt Lake is going the opposite direction.
It's receding.
A combination of water overuse, decreased rainfall, and increased temperature mean that the lake is shrinking rapidly.
And it's revealing crimes and shit.
It was 30 years ago. This is, if I need to spell it out, bad. Decreased water means increased salinity, meaning wildlife will die off in droves. The water is also necessary to drink for the millions of people who live in the surrounding area.
You can email it to me though, or whatever.
The shrinking lake is what lies beneath it.
The Twitter.
God, wouldn't it be nice if it was a kraken or something?
Right.
I wish it was a fucking kraken. No, under the Salt Lake is arsenic, copper.
It's like, I am having fun watching this video, that's why.
Instead of living next to a lake, residents could soon
you can tweet it at me and I'll answer it later.
Cancer-causing dust bowl, in which choking clouds are kicked up by wind scouring the dry lake bed. And this isn't theoretical. This exact situation has happened before. As Flavelle points out, Owens Lake in California completely dried up due to LA diverting water from its feeding river. Now, the lake is the single largest source of dust pollution in the United States.
Holy
The
shit.
particulate surrounding the lake was at one point 100 times higher than safe breathing levels.
He does have a good beard.
And in
Like,
a move
wow,
of
dust
supreme
pollution is
irony,
something I have
one of the only
fucking
ways
not
to
thought of.
contain the poison from the lake bed is to spray it back down with water, hopefully weighing it down enough that it can't blow away. Through our own actions, we released a monster that was kept safely underwater.
So, poison from, like, the fucking... Wow, that is actually insane. Because, like, if dust picks up that poison and distributes it again, that's just gonna fuck up everybody and everything.
Through our own actions,
Jesus.
we vainly try to drown it again.
Raise the audio a little
For
more.
more individual horror, you could look to Lake Mead, a precipitously dropping reservoir meant to serve Las Vegas in the Nevada area. Literally,
I wonder if there is any documentary being made about
set
the
of
train
human
shit that
remains has been
happened,
found
right?
on the now dry lake bed. One was found stuffed inside.
It's horrible
a
what
whale,
happened.
Killed by a gunshot wound nearly 50 years ago.
This, no, it seriously is so bad.
More bodies will likely emerge as the water continues to fall.
Yeah, see, that's what I was talking about.
If it falls
there is a barely sociable video I may put up. It is TOS fuck, I think. Just purely, I mean, it's not TOS. Essentially, they go over a bunch of like string of murders that happened around the area and how their bodies were dumped into that river, and because of global warming, these bodies are rising up out of nowhere. Actually, one of the things he revealed in that video is that meme of that guy, the skeleton, is stuck in the chair with shackles. Okay, so like, let me ask you music. You probably know this meme, right? It's essentially somebody took a picture of this fake skeleton. So it's like not real, right? It's not a actual person skeleton, and essentially just shackled on a chair underwater, and it's just like it was memed for a moment, if I remember. This guy, right? Well, it turns out the meme may be even darker than it seems, because not that they actually filmed a skeleton. There's a lot of those types of bodies being discovered in that Utah lake right now, and it's seriously disturbing a lot of people. And now it's reopening a bunch of cases for mafia cases and stuff like that, and missing people cases. Yeah.
Pool. Its secrets revealed just before the end.
Yeah. We can watch it. That is super disturbing, yeah.
From any book I read as a kid comes from the 11th.
And then like oil pollution is also being revealed.
Events.
Crazy.
Grim Grotto. The book largely.
Oh my god, a series of unfortunate events. I remember reading one book, but I don't remember anything.
Count Olaf. But partway through the story, there's a sequence in which the kids see something else on the submarine's sonar. Not Count Olaf's vessel, but something far more massive. A something so unknown that it literally takes the form of an enormous question mark on the sonar's readout. As you can imagine, this was electrifying for me, a kid already obsessed with big things underwater. A new threat, bigger than anything we've ever seen, more dangerous than Count Olaf? What could it be? And then the book just doesn't tell you.
Yeah.
The kids ask
that's how the book was.
Sub what it was, and he says in so many words that there are things in this world that you simply cannot imagine. He says that the sonar of their ship, the thing meant to let them see the outside, simply shows the shadows of things too great and terrible to be understood. This is also the concept, more or less, of a game released earlier this year called
Iron Lung. Yeah, this is cool.
Actually, I'd be
In other
doing you a
words,
disservice
fish
if I didn't
mutated
give you
the
the full
size of
concept
boats from
as
all
succinctly
the
as I
radiation
can.
in Chernobyl. Yeah,
Every known star and
I've heard
habitable
of
planet has
those.
vanished along with
They
the
have like
people on
big
them.
ass
The only
eyes.
people left are folks who were on spaceships
It's
when
like
this
some
happened.
crap you hear
You
out
are
of like a
convict
novel.
from one of those
It's
spaceships.
unfortunately true.
You are being forced to explore one of the few things remaining in the universe, a moon covered in an ocean of blood. The submarine you have to explore the blood ocean isn't
It is
for
creepy
depth,
as hell.
So it's been welded closed and its windows
The
have been
next
covered.
documentary is still about the ocean, and it's gonna
luck.
get even darker.
The setup is
It's still
important,
based
both
on
because it's
a lot of
probably
literature,
the most
though.
metal thing I've ever read, and
As
also
this one
because
is.
the game looks like this. A small metal room with a map, a steering mechanism, and a compass. Your goal is to navigate to every point of interest on this map and take a picture of what's there. However, since the window has been welded shut, the only
I
way
was just
to know
going to
your
ask if
location
200mm
is using the X
fans
and
would
Y
push
axis
100
provided
micron
on the map.
filament from the
And the
3D
only way
printer
to know what's
better.
outside at all is using the slow and grainy black and white
Fans?
camera fixed to the outside of the sub. This is a game in which the imagined world outside the playable area is far more important than
As
the
he
box
continues
you're
talking about the game, because the game
walking around.
you all should explore. I'm not
Nothing,
gonna add
aside
anything. I'm
from
not
the
gonna want to
inherent
spoil anything.
claustrophobia, is
I'll add
visually
certainly most of the
scary
music
about
for
the
now.
inside of this
For
box.
hypothesis.
And yet Iron Lung,
The fans cool to film
Absolutely.
it, or how does this work?
at times you'll have to pilot through canyons on the
I'm not
blood
inhaling
ocean's
shit.
floor. Without visibility, your only tools for avoiding dashing yourself on the rocks
I
are
mean,
your positional
yeah, I
coordinates,
guess you get
a
bigger
flashing
fans,
dot
yeah,
that
with
appears on your
bigger
compass, a
filters
sort of
if you want
proximity
more
alarm.
stuff.
The faster the dot flashes,
Makes
the closer
plastic
you
smell.
are to colliding with the
That
terrain.
is gross. Okay, yeah. Get the better option.
The dot
I'd assume it's the
flashes
bigger
does
one,
not
because bigger
mean
means it
anything
has
at
more
all.
surface, right?
And
More
sometimes your
flow.
entire sub shudders
Because
and then is a
smaller
mile
means you would
away
have to have
from
more
where it was a
RPM
second
to
ago,
actually
but
blow
you've
more.
been grabbed and
But
pulled by some
faster,
enormous
excuse me,
question
but
mark.
bigger means you need
The single scariest moment of the game happens
less
about halfway through.
speed
Lost
to
in the
blow
twists
more,
and
right?
turns of the
Is
map,
what I
My
remember.
compass suddenly showed me a dot.
Oh, but it's just I'm in the wrong place.
incredibly close, appearing
You
where
know how
the
much
wall
it is?
should be. I tried
But
to
yeah,
navigate away.
that's what I was gonna be kind of stingy earlier.
Finally,
But yeah,
I swung
thank you
the
for
sub
still asking.
towards the dot, took a
Sorry if I
single
sound like
picture,
that. It's just some days, like, you know. Holy shit, that's cool.
Most
Very good
pictures
place, so I
you
could
have
push
to
more
take
air. Yeah,
are
that's
not
what I'd
nearly
assume
this
too.
legible.
It just makes
They
sense.
could
It's
be
like if you have,
decayed
for example,
structures
if you
or
get a little
rock
paper and you go like
formations
this,
or
you only
biological
feel the
growths,
air kind of
and your
freezing right here. But
interpretations
if you
will
go like
probably have
this
as
with a
much to
bigger
do with
paper,
your
you feel more.
pre-existing fears as any details
that game
of the
bright?
actual photograph.
Maybe next Halloween.
And all the while, the sound design works to convince you of the endless pressure you're under, stuck in a metal box, welded shut.
Yeah.
The first bathysphere, designed by William Beebe in the 1930s, wasn't a far cry from this box. It was a sealed steel globe, its door
Holy
bolted
shit.
shut, its small windows 3 inches thick. It dangled from the side of a ship off a winch that could barely hold it. Inside the steel globe, Beebe and his colleague used palm fronds to manually circulate the air. They descended almost half a mile beneath the waves, during which time the sphere swung side to side.
Manually
so violently
circulating
they
the
collided.
air?
The windows cracked, water seeped through the sealed entrance, and yet I sat, crouched, with my forehead pressed close to the cold glass, that transparent bit of old earth which so sturdily held back 9 tons of water from my face. There came to me at that instant a tremendous wave of emotion, a real appreciation of what was momentarily almost superhuman, cosmic of the whole situation. 2 conscious beings sat and peered into the abyssal darkness as we dangled in mid-water, isolated as a lost planet in outermost space.
Yeah, there's a lot of
The
analogies
thing
using
the
with outer
Baudelaires
space.
saw in a series of unfortunate events is eventually referred to as the Great Unknown. It appears a couple more times. It is my understanding that in the extended universe of the fiction, it's explained more thoroughly. I've never really had an interest in that, though. For me, the most powerful version of its existence is just that one scene of the book, a question mark, vast, unknowable, the almost eldritch cognitive dissonance of desperately wanting to know more while simultaneously understanding there are things that are simply beyond us. I think about that great unknown a lot.
People with claustrophobia playing that game would be freaking
Here,
out. Yeah, they would.
under a
They'd be
pressure which,
freaking
if
out
loosened in a
beyond.
fraction of a second, would make amorphous tissue of our bodies, breathing our own homemade atmosphere.
Is 3D printing
Here, I
harmful
was
to the
privileged
environment?
to peer
The
out and
short answer
actually
is
see the
yes.
creatures which had evolved in the blackness
alien
of a blue
manufacturing
midnight, which since the ocean was born,
Yeah, no, it
had
isn't.
known
Yeah,
no
it's
following
harmful.
day.
I mean, everything's
Here, I
harmful.
was privileged to sit and try
We're
to
using
crystallize
dirty
what I
energy.
observed through
Me
inadequate
streaming, I'm
eyes
harming the
and
environment more than I
interpret
am
with a mind
harming
wholly unequal to the task.
than I'm saving it.
To the ever-recurring question, how did it feel? I can only
It's a lot of
quote the
wasted
words of
energy
Herbert
through
Spencer.
streaming.
I felt like an infinitesimal atom floating in illimitable space.
That's why there's people currently right now trying to figure out what's the best way to distribute energy across internet connections. That way we don't waste that much energy producing such signals. Because if we can do that, well, fuck, we just stored ourselves and efficiently made a system that carries efficiency with it.
But a far cry from the kraken that I've
Streaming
dreamed
and
of,
got
horrified
shit.
by air, crushed by its own
Got shit
self.
on crypto miners.
Like
Nah,
the
I think
repulsive,
streaming and
exquisite hidden face of an iceberg
ain't
feels
got ain't
intellectually
got shit
exciting,
on
but
crypto
spiritually
miners. Yeah.
conflicted. The magic of the world revealed and reduced simultaneously. In roaring he shall rise, and on the surface die. In 1990, Bernard Heuvelmans wrote an article for the
Journal of Cryptozoology. That's the most prestigious one for that field.
Alone is worth the price of admission. The metamorphosis of unknown animals into fabulous beasts, and of fabulous beasts into known animals. In it, Heuvelmans traces the path that human imagination
Let's
walks
read the
again.
abstract. Let's read the abstract. Abstract. The unknown animal with which cryptozoology is concerned are, by definition, incompletely known animals. As a result, we unconsciously tend to fill archetype that they best we tend to fill the gaps in our knowledge of them by borrowing missing traits from the mythical archetype that they best seem to fit. The less we know of them, the more mythicized they are, thus bound to become the mythopoeic. Yeah, right. The mythopoeic. Thought it has to supply the lion's share. What the fuck am I reading? Has to supply the lion's share. It is no wonder that such animals may be considered mere figments of the imagination. Blah, 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 blah. Then they go over what they're gonna study.
Human imagination walks again and again. Tales of an impossible creature arise: a kraken, a mermaid, a blob, and pass into
You
the
said something
realm of
about talking to
legend,
the Squidward
mythologized by
fans.
communities, while
Is that an earthquake? Am I crazy? Yeah. So streaming. No, never mind. No, it's just the washing machine. Holy shit! I'm like, why is everything shaking? Yeah, no, it's because my house is just like that. Literally. Like it's just like that. No, yeah. If it was an earthquake, because like that just scared me. It's just like the worst feeling ever. That's why I was like, actually, that's like one of my dreams is literally to buy myself a house, a two-story house that just does not shake. Is it because you're touching people groundbreaking discoveries? You're teaching people discoveries, Hey. Oh my nose. Ooh. I'm teaching people groundbreaking discoveries. How solo monster music. Inflate my ego, please. I'm just kidding. No, seriously, like it's cool stuff. Um, dude, can I assign you some homework? Ew, by the way, was I sick yesterday? Did I say something like that? Oh, wait, could it? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like stuffy yesterday, or like I know for the whole week I was worse. Yeah, yeah. No, yeah. Today it's just like it all went away. It's allergies. It's just allergies. That's all it is. That's how my allergies happen to. It's like it's like an ebb and flow. Like it gets worse, and it's like almost like I'm sick, but I'm not. I don't feel like ooh I'm gonna die or anything like that. It's just allergies. Seriously, it's like if I was sick, first thing I would notice is like fuck my head hurts, I have a fever, and also like I just don't want to be at school. Sounds like you need some allergy meds. I don't take allergy meds. I'm all natural, baby. I'm just kidding. No, not that I have some sort of fucking weird thing like that. No, it's just like I prefer not to take them because like I'm pretty sure they're inexpensive, but like I'd rather just. I've never used them my whole life, so it's just like why. My thought is like, why do I begin now and like spend like $10 and then maybe like never use them ever again? Or forget I have them, right? Yeah, that's just my thought. Ugh. Look, I've been streaming for like 12 hours straight. We still have quite a bit left to go.
Rejected by the era's scientific concept of the world. Then, the reality of the myth is revealed by, for example, a sailor returning from the sea with a 19-foot-long tentacle.
Right.
And quickly, the myth is once again bound by terrestrial ways of thinking. The kraken is classified into the giant and colossal squid.
Yeah.
Mermaids are retitled manatees. 5 to 7 tons of beach-bound protoplasm has the same molecular
You never touched
structure
on the
as a
mermaid
whale.
part unless I skipped it or
Fabulous
missed
beasts
it.
are relegated to the more respectable, less spectacular title of known animals. And yet, 7 years and 13 years after that undulating Architeuthis was pulled to open air, researchers followed the squid down, submitting to its world instead of demanding it submit to ours. Captured on video, but this time unrestrained, the squid is a wholly different creature. An alien of massive size and unknowable intelligence, gliding through the deep like a dancer. The kraken reveals itself again. Monsters are not about to die. Not that they are eternal. Surely they were born with human thought and will vanish with it. Yet I wish a long survival to all the animals of flesh and blood that were successively embodied in them, that somehow
Please
fed
don't
them
show
and
any
kept
more
them
of that
alive,
giant.
all for the comfort of our souls. We owe them that,
You
at
get
least.
flare-ups? You want to learn something
The
interesting?
difference
Yeah,
is
I
a
want to
matter
learn
of
something
deference.
interesting.
I do not mean to imply that the deep should keep its mysteries forever. I delight in every new taxonomy, obsess over new answers raising new questions. But the romantic, poetic side of me knows that sightings of the true legends have to be earned. We cannot understand those depths by the refuse that floats to its surface.
Yeah,
Meeting the
like you
great
mentioned,
unknown on
we
its
only
own
ever
turf
get the
requires a sort
sick,
of
the
surrender.
slow,
We must
or
give
the
ourselves
outright
to the deep
dumb. The sick,
before the deep
slow.
will
No,
give
no,
its
right?
knowledge in return.
The sick, the dying, or the slow. I don't know. He said something like that earlier. That's such an interesting quote. I'll find it right now. Oh my god, no, I don't know. People really something like that. Starts over.
Enteroctopus dophylaena could actually absolutely get our history. The Japan and the lot moved away 100 feet below north. In there's actually a concept, food isopsizing floor author line between fiction and later. Thousands of future discovery, many science fiction.
Whatever. The point is that that quote is fucking great. Now this is next pose another excuse me, fear of the deep. Yeah, this is fucking great. The body temperature of men born in 2000s is 1.06 degrees lower on average. Than men born in the early 1800s. Women have temps 458 degrees Fahrenheit lower than those born on the 1890s, which means that body temperatures decline zero point zero 0.05 degrees Fahrenheit every decade. That's very interesting. That is.
Where are you? I've been trying to reach you for 5 days. 5 fucking days and nothing. Where are my kids, Frank? Where are my fucking kids?
This one's pretty similar. Yeah, this one's pretty fucking sick. That's his little hashtag ad. So again, the sea is vast and endless, right? And we haven't explored it that much at all.
It's a summer day, and you're out for an ocean swim.
This is how he begins it.
You take a breath. You head under. It's beautiful at 1st. You're in a whole new world. You keep going and going and going. As you come up,
Currently, less than 10% of the global ocean is mapped using modern sonar technology for the ocean and coastal waters. Yep, exactly.
You just need one more look, though. And alas, you take one more
Only
plunge.
35% of that 10% is mapped modernly.
But
You're right.
it seems that you may have had a slight miscalculation. As your eyes draw into focus, you realize that there's nothing to focus on.
Look at that.
No floor.
No floor.
No fish.
Exactly.
No walls. All there is a void of darkness. A cold, endless abyss gazing back at you. There is nothing there but yourself, the water, and the vast unknown.
Yeah. Exactly. We're gonna get into some TOS stuff right now. Imagine if what you could see in see if the sun brightened up the entire ocean. Yeah, you'd probably see so much more.
You know, it's funny. I've been trying to figure out for years how to put into words the existential dread I get from something as conceptually simple as the ocean. The immeasurable expanse that remains one of the world's greatest mysteries.
Right.
It is painfully unsettling that our current knowledge of it is minuscule, rivaling that of the moon, and even the planet Mars.
Yeah, we know more about Mars than the moon.
Upon looking at the raw data, knowing that over 80%
so you
of this
could argue
underwater abyss remains unmapped and unexplored to this day, drives home the gut-wrenching realization that we truly know next to nothing about what's actually down there.
Yeah.
We know more about the surface of a planet we have never set foot on than we do about the ocean engulfing the vast majority of the planet on which we live.
Yeah.
And to me, that implication is horrifying.
Exactly. And that like goes back to our conversation we were talking about yesterday. It's like, why would we want to terraform Mars when we can't even fucking explore our fucking own world? You know what I mean? Or even fix it, or even try to like do stuff with our own world. You know, it's very sad. Remember the time they found spoons on Mars? I don't remember that actually. You catch me up on that? Is that a joke? I've never heard of that. It's because people on Earth are on Earth for so little time. What do you mean? Like we just see stuff? Like of course, yeah. Like we can see Jesus' face on like Mars, for example. Yep, yep. They don't care. They always say it's for the next generation's problem. Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah.
It's called the deep blue for a reason, because it is incomprehensibly so. At just over 36,000 feet straight down, you can fit the entirety of Mount Everest with over 7,000 feet to spare. You could theoretically launch a jumbo jet off the bottom of the ocean's deepest point and hardly make it to surface level at its cruising altitude.
Exactly.
And if you stack the Empire State Building end to end, you would need over 24 of them, one on top of the other, to reach surface level from its darkest abyss.
Yeah.
Thalassophobia is a concept that encompasses the fear of the ocean. Yet what it actually entails might mean something entirely different to you than it does to me. Some may fear the ocean's gargantuan, seemingly endless size.
Yeah.
Or fear nature's unforgiving wrath.
How much pirate treasure is down there? There's actually not that much pirate treasure.
Or fear things that don't belong inside
out there in the world, believe it or not.
Or fear what we found.
That's the squid that we were talking about earlier.
Fear what we haven't. Much of what we think of when we imagine the ocean are visuals that we can logically comprehend. Reference points like coral reefs, the seafloor, and even sea creatures that share this world with us help us paint a mental picture that is coherent. In reality though, once you tread off the beaten path and veer over the continental shelf separating our world from theirs, what's actually out there is a seemingly infinite void and a macrocosm that we may never fully explore. All across the internet, we can find troves of video demonstrating the ocean's colossal scale.
You can also find the last moments too.
Viewing footage of divers like Jonathan Byrne treading the fringe of safety and complete danger by venturing out and into what appears to be completely nothing will never not cause me to tense up. There is an entire world below them, a world shrouded in darkness, a world ripe for discovery, a world with caves, valleys, entire underwater oceans, and man-made relics, all just waiting there until the end of time.
Yeah. We got it, Donkey Kong Country 3. Whoa.
Since I was a child, thalassophobia has unknowingly held me with an iron grip. Jolly Roger Bay and its feeling of constant tension as we explore a man-made creation ravaged by nature. Pinnacle Rock and its cavernous gorge infested with creatures.
Why is it only Nintendo 64 games, man? I'm just kidding.
With its multitude of claustrophobic underwater caverns, disorienting us at every turn. It's funny because paradoxically, I have always felt that the soundtracks to these levels are beautiful,
I wonder if there was
which
any
always counteracted the dread I got
countries
from having to endure environments like this. Perhaps it was the fact that in these
oh my god, I said
games, we are
islanders. Oh my
always
god,
racing
I
the
don't know
clock,
why I read that as
lest
that.
we
Yeah,
drown to
islands,
death
yeah.
when our time is up.
Well, islands
But
don't
the
sink.
fact that enemies always move faster than we do.
There's
Or
something
maybe it's the
more
lack of
that happens
visibility.
to them.
The darkness
I
that
understand what
shrouds
you mean.
us just feet away, depriving us of any ability to prepare for an impending threat. Or could it be the creatures, the monsters who call this unforgiving habitat home?
No, but rising water levels would slowly make those islands disappear. Yeah, that's what happens. Rarely do you ever see like an island sink.
In early 2022, a video game released encompassing every fear that I have ever had regarding the ocean. It's called Iron Lung, and you may have heard of it through my fellow creators like Markiplier, Pyrocynical, and Jacob Geller. The game puts us into the shoes of a convict, trapped in a world far removed from ours. At the game's beginning, we're told that, out of nowhere, every single habitable planet was demolished in a cataclysmic event known only as the Quiet Rapture.
Yeah, this is something the other
With
video
this,
didn't
the
really
future
get
of
into.
humankind was left dangling by a thread, as only those aboard spacecrafts were safe from it. For years, The remaining survivors have done what they could to jumpstart humanity, navigating the vast frontier that is the universe in search of any sliver of hope that a habitable planet remains out there. Guided by nothing but dying starlight, mankind is confined to the vast expanse of nothingness, left to salvage the scant resources.
Again, outer space is such a
moons.
analogy
But on
to,
just a
it's
handful of
analogous
them,
to like the
we
sea,
find
you know?
a strange anomaly.
At least for this moment in time.
Oceans of blood that might be the key to unlocking the resources we so desperately need to survive. You and I are tasked with boarding a makeshift submarine that was not designed for extreme depth, navigating an ocean that is completely alien from anything we've
Yeah, be
ever
right back.
seen
Yep,
or
yep.
known,
I'll see you
left
in
to
a
search
moment.
for and photograph natural resources that
I'm gonna make
may
some
not
food, dude.
even
I
be
was
down
hungry
there.
too.
To add
The,
insult
before
to
you came,
injury,
I think I
the
ate
submarine will be welded
or
shut
something.
and the window reinforced with thick metal. A rolling method of navigation, a map, a rudimentary control system, a single camera, and our own intuition, guided by whatever sounds we may hear down there. For all we know, we may not survive,
Yeah.
but inside the iron lung, at least we won't know what killed us.
That is interesting, right?
Cruising depth in roughly 40 seconds. Stand by. I'm seeing some voltage irregularities in the instruments, so keep an eye out for sparks or flames or anything like that.
Yeah.
Approaching maximum depth. The hull's feeling it, but it's still holding strong. Closing porthole shielding. We're starting to lose radio signal. You'll be at cruise depth soon, so return and be careful. You're on your own.
It's crazy that you can lose signal.
From the very beginning, we know this will not be simple. The iron lung flexes and creaks, seemingly reaching its limit under the crippling weight of the ocean. The radio cuts out, severing our only line of communication, and letters penned by previous convicts warn us of an impending fate. For the entire game, we're left to follow a map, adjusting our rotation as we blindly navigate this foreign underwater sea in hopes of taking pictures at each designated point. Interestingly, the iron lung is equipped with a proximity sensor to warn us when we come too close to an obstacle. And at first, it seems like a no-brainer. The ship is already cruising on its last leg, so any physical contact could spell the end of us altogether.
Yeah.
As we make our way to each checkpoint, we're able to utilize a shoddy camera system to view the outside world.
That's like the worst
With
part about
intervals
that
of
game.
just
It's like,
one
what the
single
fuck?
frame, we're left
What
with
happened to all the
nothing but
camera
grainy,
systems?
black and white visuals that are more often than not completely inexplicable. A corpse of a foreign giant. Unknown structures with monsters just out of view. Legs from what appear to be giant spiders. And objects that bear no discernible shape. The horror of Iron Lung comes interwoven within the very fabric of how it's played. We are confined to an iron cell, left with none other than the dread stemming from our own biases as our minds fill the blanks these grainy images leave for us. And on top of this, as we traverse this underwater hell,
Yeah, there's a bunch of like shit happening. They get into it, they like show like you're being chased by something
that
eventually.
proximity sensor sure goes wild, even when we're certain there's no obstacle anywhere around us.
Yeah.
Whatever is out there is lurking, analyzing us for just the right moment. We cannot see them, we cannot prepare, and we have no idea what it is around us.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's sort of poetic because it resembles the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Blood oceans upon vast alien moons aren't too far off from the concept of our own.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes Iron Lung so horrifying. Anytime we enter the ocean, we enter a habitat not made for us. We can't breathe. We can't hear. We can't see. But they can.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight, I won't spoil the ending, so if you haven't yet experienced this game,
Yeah.
please do, because it'll be well worth your time. The story is engaging and thought-provoking. The atmosphere is unmatched for those afraid of the deep, and the ending has a catch that will stick with you for a while. In my opinion, Iron Lung is one of the greatest modern examples of thalassophobia portrayed through video games, and as an avid fan of Subnautica, that's sure saying something.
Yeah, those two games are pretty fucking wonderful when it comes to understanding what thalassophobia is. The Thing, yeah, this comes from a manga. Wait, there's no fucking odd depictions, is there?
Hidden inside the second chapter of Slug Girl, part of the horror world of Junji Ito
Okay.
collection, exists a story. The Thing That Drifted Ashore. It involves the tale of a mysterious object that washes up on the coast of the Pacific Ocean. It's a creature completely alien.
Yeah.
It's gargantuan, slimy. It's disgusting. On its face are massive cysts and
parallels
tumors
the other
with
one
small
too.
appendages
This
emerging
video?
from them. And worst of all, it smells because it's rotting. Nevertheless,
Yeah.
it draws a crowd in the hundreds, all eager to examine and preserve this colossal spectacle. Among the crowd, we encounter a young boy with an acute fear of the ocean. All his life, he's had nightmares of floating in the deep sea,
Oh, wow.
surrounded by hordes of massive ocean giants. While out there, he meets a woman named Mie. She explains that 7 years prior, she had lost her fiancé in a ferry accident.
Yeah.
No trace of him was ever found. However, ever since, she's been afflicted with ocean nightmares, highly similar to the boys.
Oh wow. Yeah. I
As
remember
she's
this
telling
one.
her story though,
Yeah. The creature rips or something.
the onlookers notice something.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah, it's 8.
The creature's skin
Yeah.
has transparent spots. And on the inside are humans,
Yeah.
entirely intact.
Mm-hmm.
They cut the creature open.
This is crazy gruesome and gross, dude. This is a crazy thing to just hear
The
about.
people are still alive. And
Somehow,
it's realized that
yeah.
one of them is Bie's fiancé, the one who went missing years ago. Shortly after, the bile-covered people begin to panic, crawling in all sorts of directions like inhuman monsters. As it turns out, they were trapped inside of this thing for years, living off it like parasites as they traversed the pitch-black deep ocean. And the dreams they had of the ocean giants larger than a school bus were, in actuality, what those inside of it were seeing all those years. Because of their confinement, every person recovered that day was officially declared insane.
Yeah.
And the story ends pondering on what else might be out there.
Just such a crazy thing to like hear about. Like, this story is crazy. He's just like, it's fiction, right? But like, imagine, like, it's so weird because it's not unimaginable.
The thing that drifted ashore is special because its horror is twofold. On one hand, we have an ocean monster that lives off shipwrecked human beings. Yet on the other, we have the visual of what they saw while confined down there.
Exactly.
Grotesque, giant fish with massive eyes and appendages. Beasts capable of devouring entire human beings. And creatures beyond our level of comprehension. The ocean is uniquely fascinating because it's the one medium on Earth in which fact can meet fantasy. Ocean monsters can be thought into existence with hardly a way to disprove them within our lifetime. And the potential of what could be overpowers our collective psyche, as that curiosity may never be satiated. It seems that until the end of time, legendary ocean monsters like the Kraken, the Hydra, and the Leviathan will always fascinate us given our sheer inability to explore the habitat in which they live. Tales of the high seas, of tragedy by the hands of fantastical beasts will persist evermore, fueling fans and fears of the ocean for generations to come. The thing that drifted ashore nails this mistake in the realm of legend, yet it plays on concepts entirely grounded in reality. Deep-sea giants are not fiction, and the condition of abyssal gigantism is an actuality.
The farthest thing from fishy. I said fishy. I say fiction. It's also like a pun because it's like fishy fiction. Doesn't make sense though. There's quite a lot more left still. I think the next one is like actual like
the ocean becomes cold,
depiction of a story or something.
full of creatures inexplicable.
I swear,
the octopi, dolphins, and vibrant ecosystems embedded within coral reefs. We instead find species exhibiting bioluminescence, bearing foreboding teeth, and riddled with a curious affliction. Colossal size.
Afflictions aren't necessarily bad, they can be good. No, all translucent. That's something interesting to think about.
When we look at these photos, it's difficult to establish a sense of scale. The colossal squid alone looks relatively unassuming until you're given a visual comparison respective to a human.
And then you're like, fuck, that thing's
fish
huge.
Appears like a minuscule eel.
Until you see it.
Realize they can grow up to 36 feet long. Deep-sea gigantism has created a plethora of monsters. Japanese spider crabs bearing 12-foot legs. Deep-sea isopods growing multiple feet in length. Sea spiders up to nearly 2 feet long. Anglerfish the size of humans. The big fin squid with tentacles extending upwards of 26 feet long. And even creatures like the siphonophore, a floating amalgamation made of a colony of zooids chaining themselves together hundreds of feet in length.
All to live as one organism overall.
For over 90% of the ocean, sunlight is not able to penetrate, fostering an environment in which life like this needs to adapt to survive. A region known as the Abyssal Plain makes up 70% of the entire seafloor as we know it. However, because of the lack of sunlight, plants and vegetation simply cannot thrive down there.
So the other one was
This,
external, right? The
presents a
sea,
natural
as we
conundrum,
see
as
it
the bottom of the food
from
chain
the
typically
outside
relies on flora for satiation.
to the sea, right?
And
This
so,
one's from like
this
the
is where
sea to the
phenomenon known
outside,
as
how we
marine
see
snow
it.
comes into play. Made up of decomposed organisms from above, on top of fecal matter, sand, and the remains of fish. Most of the known deep ocean fauna rely on it as their main source of food. With this in mind, it would only make sense for creatures to evolve by shrinking as not only are they
Right,
compressed
but
by
they
the
actually
ocean's
grow.
sheer weight, but are also left devoid of solid meals. As we've seen though,
Yeah,
reality is quite the opposite.
exactly. The crazy part is, um, likewise, we could say the same about like our ecosystem on the outside. Plants, for example, those things are huge. They grow. How big is a photon? We don't know. Like actually, uh, like a thin electron for a photon, HV. Yeah, a radius. Well, we technically know, but like, yeah, it's like there's more to a photon, right? Than just that. Um, the point is like, you know, they get bombarded by a lot of plants get bombarded by a bunch of photons, right? Released by the sun as sunlight, right? But the point is, those things grow, and likewise, I feel like marine snow is like the sunlight for like like the deep underwater environments of our, you know, uh, planet just in general. And instead of like maybe growing smaller because they can't feed off of much of that fucking fecal matter or whatever the fuck that marine dust is, right? Instead of going like whoop whoop, like grabbing their little bit and just being satisfied, these beings have to grow into like a big enough size to harvest it and then eat off of it, just basically feed off of other individuals that have also fed off of it. It's insane.
stories.
Oops, wrong one. There we go.
Kleber's law states that the larger an organism's
Yeah.
mass is, the more efficient its metabolic rate becomes. This notion results
Actually, yeah, no, and also this is why whales that get cancer are almost unheard of. Literally, whales will not get cancer. I am not even kidding you. Their metabolic rate is just too good. They get cancer, but it's like their body gets rid of it. Do whales get cancer? Cancer should be a near certainty for whales. Yeah, but scientists are finding that is that word cetaceans are excellent protecting themselves against the deadly disease. Yeah. Why won't whales develop cancer, and why should we care? Although researchers know that cancer risk increases as a person ages and gains weight, whales, the largest mammals, do not experience this correlation. In fact, they are some of the animals at least likely to get cancer. New research aims to find out why that is. I know like one of the things is definitely like they get less sunlight, even though they do breach sometimes or just go up to like the surface. But yeah, like
colossal,
who
highly
knows?
efficient sea life lurking within the ocean's darkest depths, waiting and grazing for their next meal. I would be remiss,
This
however,
fish.
if I did not state that these are mere postulations, as the
Yeah.
phenomenon of abyssal gigantism is still being studied.
Exactly, because
of
we
the
don't know if it'll
historical
hold. It's like
impossibility of exploring the deep ocean,
it's
much of how sea life survives.
what's that fucking guy called in electronics? Not Kramer's rule. Oh my god, Kramer's rule. This is Kramer's rule. No, what is it fucking called? I forget what it's called. McCarthy's rule? I don't remember what the fuck it's called. Microtransactions. Oh my god, did I fucking name it? This is doubling. Moore's law. There we go. It's like that was essentially thought of as true
Lives
until
down
like
there
recently
is
for some
entirely
freaking
unknown.
reason.
Alongside this, it's believed that over 91% of the ocean species have not even been discovered, compounding with the already extraordinary statistic that the vast majority of the deep blue remains completely unseen by human eyes. Up to this point, everything I've
That's
shown
old
you in
footage.
this video
Notice
has
how he's
fallen
cycling
within the
through a lot
mere
of old
9%
footage, not
of
like new
creatures we
footage.
have seen.
Nobody's dared ventured.
Now imagine imagine what we haven't.
Well, I mean, there's still people venturing, but like, you know, it's not that, you know, common. It's raining again, so my internet's gonna go down. Wow, foreboding music. That's so alien. Like something so fictional. I don't know.
It goes without saying that the ocean is treacherous, yet that hasn't slowed those eager to explore it. The allure of underwater caves, blue holes, and ocean cliffsides make for an experience
This is a
both
place that
riveting
gets
and
TOS.
spiritually fulfilling. However, it's unfortunately fairly common for deep-sea dives to go awry.
I don't know if what I can and can't show. The blue hole, the Egypt. This is the one I was talking about. The one in Egypt.
On the 28th of April 2000, 22-year-old Yuri Lipsky geared
Let me put on the Christmas tree.
up for a dive within the blue hole.
Because
in
they
Egypt.
show the footage.
Known as one of the most dangerous diving locations in the world.
It's beautiful though. Y'all should watch it along with me.
One of its standout features is its underwater arch.
Yeah, it's
a
huge.
massive 170 feet
I think this is
tall,
just random
resting
ones, so I can show a
164
little
feet
bit.
below the surface,
Right?
and extending 85 feet in length. It's been reported that the blue hole is deceptive, appearing to be much shorter than it is when you manage to get down there. Alongside this, it bears areas with strong down currents, making for a physically grueling experience. When inside, depth and oxygen monitoring are a must. Yet Lipsky, fully aware of the risks involved with such an intensive dive, maintained optimism in his physical ability.
Yeah, he's gonna show his footage. Is the reason why we can see his footage is because it was recovered by a diver who went down there and was like, fuck, well, he's dead. Grabs his stuff and goes up, reports it to the police and family members, and it's sad. Because the thing about dying underwater is if you don't die, like, if you die, like, at a fucking big enough pressure, or if you dive deep enough, essentially what ends up happening is, like, for example, if you were to just go like this, like on the surface of the ocean, right, you would float, right? But if you get deep enough into the water, essentially you're not going back up, unless there's enough gases that are built up in your body. If you go even deeper and deeper and deeper, essentially the pressure of the ocean just weighs you down to the bottom floor and you cannot rise up. And this is what this diver made the mistake of doing. And also eventually a lot of like nitrogen and a lot of other gases start building up in your body and you start going crazy, and it's basically like you're drunk, right? Like you're literally drunk diving. It's crazy. And yeah, you end up dying because you run out of oxygen and you just stay there pinned down with your stuff under the ocean, and it's so tragic. I'll skip the stuff. Hopefully it doesn't talk about stuff then.
Yuri is now over 270 feet below surface, signaling a multitude of inconvenient truths. The oxygen in his tank is quickly becoming toxic. His buoyancy is dwindling, and an effect known as nitrogen narcosis is plaguing him, instilling a sensation of complete drunkenness.
That's nitrogen narcosis is the reason why some people hear the call of the deep. The call of the deep is a phenomenon where essentially people that go diving, sometimes they just want to keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, and they just die. If you don't intervene with your buddy or whatever that just wants to keep on going deeper, they will literally just die. They'll just keep on going deeper and deeper and deeper, and it's insane. Oh my god. Okay, let's skip that. Yeah, literally his beeper is like, fuck, like, fucking, you're fucked. I don't want to show this part because, you know, ooh, it's still going. If you all want to watch the footage yourself,
Yuri
go watch
Lipsky
it.
met his demise in one of the most dangerous diving locations in the world. He embarked to set a personal record to achieve a depth that he had never before seen, yet in that pursuit lost his life to the grueling conditions of the deep blue. Since the incident, Yuri's body was recovered.
Phenomenal.
However, the same can't be said for a multitude of others that have met the same fate. Online, you can find footage of divers discovering the remains of their counterparts with their gear still intact. And it's haunting knowing that if those specific divers did not dive in that specific spot, their
they would have
remains may
lived.
never been found,
Or,
forever
excuse me, never mind.
confined to the pitch black crypt
Yeah.
that is the deep sea.
Why have the Christmas tree again?
Humanity and the ocean have a bizarre relationship with death.
Yeah.
Superstorms leveling entire cities. Gargantuan waves rocking man's largest ships like a bathtime toy. And
That's
rogue
crazy to
waves
think
that
about.
emerge from nowhere, destroying even the largest and safest of oil rigs.
That thing's just
To
gonna
this day,
sink.
remnants of over 3 million shipwrecks exist on the seafloor, with thousands upon thousands of massive man-made objects accompanying them. Much like the remains of divers, these relics imply and signify defeat and death, lost by the hand of an environment we had set out to tame, and an everlasting token of failure.
Yeah. The Titanic is literally an example of
There's an
such
interesting
a thing.
subset of thalassophobia called submechanophobia that delves into the very specific fear of encountering these relics in the wild. It's this
It's like
primordial
weird.
repulsion caused by the crippling uncanniness of an object that does not belong, compounded with the lack of any ability to determine its true size. Photo and video of the Titanic,
Yeah.
of
That's
forgotten
modern.
animatronics, of ancient relics, a massive anchor.
That's all from
of
the
sunken
Titanic.
airplanes.
If y'all didn't know, the Titanic actually was carrying a bunch of fucking relics from around the world. And you know, a lot of people think the Titanic was just literally taking passengers to like America, but it was a lot more than that. Like, it's crazy. And it's actually, if I remember, me if I spell that. Yeah. According to some sources, when an Egyptian princess named she was said to be laid in a wooden ornate coffin. They apparently they carried like the frozen remain of a mummy or something in the fucking Titanic, and now that's like forever fucking lost in just like the sea, right? Yeah, it's crazy.
The interior of shipwrecks are effectively fueling a newer, more recently discovered phobia made possible by the rise of
Phobia.
cameras
It's like,
able to document
is that even
them.
a phobia or is that just like what
But
people
it
want to
isn't
label it
always
as?
abandoned
Like,
structures, though.
I don't think
As
I'm actually
video,
afraid of such a thing.
like this one.
For example. Yeah, that's close. He's gonna die because it's like a boat with the propeller. Yeah, look at that. He's literally about to get hit by that.
also exemplify this phobia in its purest form. For me personally, submechanophobia persists because of the total inability to fully see an object as it truly is. Like we touched on earlier, our minds are hardwired to fill in blanks with what could be, and more often than not, we achieve this with the most horrifying possible outcome. On land, fog is always seen as a mood setter for the strange and mysterious. And inside the darkest confines of the deep blue, perhaps
it's like
we
the
can see this
same.
idea at
Yeah.
work here too.
It's just the murkiness of the water, right? Yep. He's basically done, I think. Closing remarks. Yeah, this is totally 3 weeks ago.
It's hard to find the words to conceptualize the fear of the deep in just a single YouTube video, as there are so many ways we can and have taken it. Whether it's the fear of sea life, or its infinite size, or how dark it is, or how much we truly don't know about it, or its capability of devastation, or its grip on human life. One thing has and will always hold true. The ocean is fucking horrifying. It's an unforgiving frontier harboring some of the most harrowing life and environmental enigmas on the planet. It is and always will be one of life's great mysteries. An entire world we share, yet know so little about. The vast majority of the planet, yet completely uninhabitable by mankind. Throughout history, it's been said that the moment you enter the ocean, you enter the food chain. Yet, contrary to how it is on land, in their world, in their vast abyss of darkness, humankind is nowhere near the top.
Yeah. This is a fucking great fucking video, dude. And yeah, now there's too long, so now we shift over to essentially another side of the same coin when it comes to the environment. See, now we can kind of get into like how people set up the environment, at least when it comes to like in stories, right? I'm not sure if we're gonna watch all of these. Here are different examples. One originating from Japan, right? Ako Igahara stories, Equalizer. This is just like I'm pretty sure like American. And then we get into like, you know, how people produce stupid game design or whatever. Yeah, and then Horror of the Lingers and other stuff like that. And yeah, I think that's it after that. That's it for like the day. And yeah. So let me go to the restroom fast. And yeah, I'll be back in a moment. For the meanwhile, let's see.
I need to find the best way.
Fukushima, the word.
Is there a barely searchable video? Because I'm actually gonna probably eat something else. That oatmeal was not it. It was like it didn't fill me up. Oh yeah. Searchable, it's right here.
Today's video is brought to you by Babbel. One thing I really appreciate about the internet is that it makes it pretty easy to learn various skills without the need for a classroom. I learned how to edit, write scripts.
Oh. Is it this one? This one's new though. Ah, yeah, that.
again, and
let me
welcome
just
back to
remember
the
how you
second
search it up.
channel. Now, unless you've been intentionally avoiding the news this past year, I'm sure many of you have probably come across today's topic. It's this ever-growing situation that's budding out of Lake Mead in Las Vegas. It's been
Yeah.
quite an interesting saga thus
More
far.
environmental.
And even if you've never
So
been
I'll
to
have this
Vegas,
playing.
pretty much
I'm
everybody's
pretty
heard
sure
of the
nobody's
Hoover
just showed it
Dam,
if
so
they are.
I'm sure many people
Please,
have
Twitch,
become
I am
familiar
so
with
sorry.
what's
I
been
am
going on
going to
this
get
past
some
year.
more food right now.
That being said, though,
And
throughout
I'm
the
gonna run to
frenzy
the
of
restroom, so I'll be
discussions
back right
swirling
now.
about this online, I've yet to find a single video or anything comprehensive that seems to tie this saga together. In case you're unfamiliar with what's been going on, essentially Lake Mead in Nevada is the world's largest man-made water reservoir, but as of recently, that title may only be a tentative one, as today, satellite images show that the lake has essentially become a shell of its former self. This is rather concerning, as Lake Mead is not only a key source of water for residents of Las Vegas, but also people in parts of Arizona, California, and even some parts of Mexico. Back in the year 2000, the water level held at a depth of around 1,200 feet, but as of July of 2022, the water level dropped to a new low at 1,044 feet. But this 20-year downward trend would really only catch the general public's attention on May 1st, 2022.
It's uncharted waters for Metro's Homicide Division. None of us have encountered this before, where we're going to have a deceased individual who's been underwater for, upwards of potentially 40 years. And a discovery that never seemed possible. Had the water level not receded so far, we never make the discovery of this victim. 40 years ago, where this barrel with human remains inside sits, was roughly 100 feet underwater and several hundred yards from shore. Someone had to have a boat, and someone had to, put someone in the barrel and push them off the boat. Could it stem from organized crime, or something completely different? That's what Lieutenant Ray Spencer's team will dig into, if they can extract DNA from the remains. And if you notice, I'm saying if, because it will be a very challenging part of this investigation.
Naturally, this discovery gave rise to massive amounts of speculation, as this spawned countless discussions about a mob tide of disappearances in and around the late 70s and early 80s, as this barrel method of disposal has a rich history within the American mafia. But just as the general public was able to digest this first discovery, that was when another discovery of human remains would be found, and then another, and another, and to date, as we come to the end of 2022, 6 different discoveries of human remains have been found at Lake Mead, all within the same year. If this scene looks somewhat familiar, it's because it's the source of that one meme. For years, scuba divers at Lake Mead have made it a point to decorate the lake with fake skeletons to give divers something to look at while they're learning or for the occasional spook. It's a pretty common prank that you'll often see in pretty much any freshwater lake, and there's quite a bit of creativity that goes into a lot of these scenes and Easter eggs they create for other divers. But with the frequency of real bodies being found this past year, it's all fun and games until you realize just how many real bodies are still sitting at the bottom of the lake. And while much of the media attention has been focusing on the story through the lens of organized crime, so far there's actually been no confirmed evidence that ties any of this to the mafia. While the body in the barrel is perhaps the strongest candidate, we'll only know for certain with a positive ID. And with the other discoveries made thus far, none of those show any hallmarks at all. And as a bit of a side note, you should also know that there's a history of people using barrels as a disposal method to cast suspicion towards the mafia, even when it wasn't actually them. So while DNA tests stay pending, the body in the barrel case is really a case that's a needle in a haystack with heavy amounts of speculation. All we really know for sure in this case was that the man's clothing was sold at a Kmart in and around the mid to late 1970s, and he sustained a single shot to the head. While it's presumed that the man passed away in and around the same time period, for all we know, those clothes could have been received secondhand, And generally speaking, dating the post-mortem interval of bodies found in water for extended periods of time is often incredibly difficult due to things like adipocere. But that being said, at the time of me making this video, there is one primary candidate that has seen some reporting. That being a man by the name of Robert Eugene Shaw. As reported by his sister, he did apparently have mob ties and disappeared on May 14, 1977. He disappeared when he decided to go on a car ride from Fontana to Las Vegas with a friend. Both of them haven't been seen since. And while this is a lead, it raises a lot of other questions like what happened to the other person that he was with and so on. Admittedly, there's not a lot of information about his disappearance or who he was even with at the time. There's definitely something to be said about this body in the barrel case when the main lead has virtually no information. While this one has kind of stuck in terms of reporting, the only other information that's been dug up about him is that he seems to have had some involvement with the culinary union strikes in 1976. The head of this labor union and strike was a mob-connected union leader named Al Bramlett. Bramlett was known for being ruthless in orchestrating bombings with restaurants that would not cooperate with unionization efforts. But at the end of the strike, he ultimately ended up on the wrong side of the Chicago outfit, which ultimately led to his demise. And while that's an interesting side story, all this documentation really shows was that Robert E. Shaw was involved with the labor union strike. It places him within close proximity to the mafia's operations, but it's not necessarily like proof of a mob tie. The labor union at the time represented around 22,000 workers. As it stands today, DNA tests have been pending since August of.
Nothing crazy's been shown.
Of 2022, with no word back.
No,
but I should add that the
no.
LVPD has also solicited a number of other families as well. It's just no further details have been revealed thus far. And with you now caught up to speed on the body in the barrel, I think it's time that we now move on to the rest of the bodies found this past year. Because if you take some time to really survey what was found, it doesn't really paint a picture of a mafia dumping ground at Lake
putting
Mead,
toast in there.
but rather
As
a
soon as yours comes up,
graveyard of
just
tourists
saying,
who spent their last vacation at a national park.
The holiday weekend comes to a close. So does a deadly summer season at Lake Mead. Contact 13 investigative reporter Joe Bartels spent today at America's deadliest national park and saw firsthand why it can be so dangerous.
Lake Mead is a hotspot this Labor Day. As many as 150,000 people visited the lake just this weekend, but unfortunately, the lake is living up to its deadly reputation. The holiday on Lake Mead marred by tragedy. Investigators say a man was dragged under a houseboat during a thunderstorm Saturday. His death sharing a common theme with all of the drownings at the park this year.
This year there have been 11 fatalities related to drowning, and in each of those situations, none of the victims were wearing a life jacket.
Yes, you heard that correctly. Lake Mead is technically the deadliest national park in America due to the sheer number of drownings. In a variety of cases, the bodies are not recovered due to the depth or lack of visibility in the area. Out of the 6 discoveries made this past year, only 1 has showed any signs of foul play, pointing to the rest of the discoveries likely being accidents or drowning victims. To date, only 1 of the bodies has been positively identified, discovery number 2, which ended up being the body of a 42-year-old man named Thomas Erndt, who drowned while on vacation with his 2 children. His body had been sitting down there for nearly 20 years, and unfortunately, his case is just one of many. As in a variety of other cases involving Lake Mead, the search and rescue efforts just simply fail to locate the deceased and eventually stop searching. To quote one article from The Guardian, unless there's a suspicion of wrongdoing, most local authorities will only spend a week or 2 searching for a drowning victim. Then it's up to the family of the missing person or volunteers. Some families spend thousands of dollars a day on commercial diving services. Others drag the bottom of the lake with grappling hooks. Sometimes they chance upon the victim. Often they work until their resources and spirits are spent. And to quote one article from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Jeff Burbank is a former reporter for the LVRJ. In 1994, he researched for the newspaper how many people have gone missing at the recreation area. He found that since the National Park Service began keeping records in 1937 until 1994, some 59 people were listed as missing or presumed drowned in the recreation area. Furthermore, he would continue, many of the missing were boaters whose vessels were sunk by winds and waves. Some went under while fishing or swimming. One of the missing was a parachutist. One took their own life, one died in a plane crash, one was swept away by a flash flood. All had one thing in common. Their bodies were never recovered despite being in the lake, in most cases for decades. Now, obviously, this data doesn't factor in for all of the other drownings that would occur post-1994, nor would it account for anybody who ended up in the lake without any kind of documentation or not telling anybody where they went that day. Thomas Erndt, for example, passed away in 2002, which would land him outside that original list of 59. And additionally, it's also worth mentioning that another individual, Kenneth Funk, drowned in 2004 while trying to save his wife. His body is still unaccounted for. There's been some speculation from the family that discovery number 3, the lone torso that was found there, was in fact him, as they believe it matched the general build and location. But as it stands today, there's been no confirmation. Additionally, authorities have hinted at discovery number 4, the partial set of remains, to be a part of number 3.
Yeah, this is what I was talking
Once
about
again,
earlier.
This is not confirmed
About bodies
either.
just
And in
washing
regards
up
to
on
discoveries 5 and 6, there's been very
specifically
little details shared thus far. But obviously this is an ongoing saga, and I will try to make it a point to keep you guys updated.
Yeah.
But with you now caught up to speed with what has
Oh
happened
shoot,
this
I
past
forgot.
year, I'll go ahead and say that I don't think it's unreasonable to surmise that at least a few of the Mafia's problems are probably at the bottom of Lake Mead. Given the close proximity and that city's rich history, it's a very high likelihood. But as it stands today, there's been a lot of eyes on this story, and all we can really do today is speculate.
Yeah.
What I do really enjoy about a topic like this is that it kind of opens up a lot of discussion for other things, like what do you think we'll find in the near future? What disappearances come to mind from this era? I'd love to know what you guys think about all of this, but before we end today's video, I'd like to give perhaps my favorite candidate for the body in the barrel. Obviously this is speculative, but I think it's an interesting story. That being the disappearance of Johnny Pappas.
Okay.
This man was the former manager of the Echo Bay Resort. This was a project that was funded by the Teamsters Pension, headed by the Argent Corporation. This was a hotel, notably on Lake Mead. But today, the hotel sits as a reminder of what can happen when the shoreline recedes.
Yeah.
As the launch ramp into the lake now leads into
This
the
is,
dirt.
this is an intersection between a lot of problems. Global warming, the mafia.
This location
Money
closed down
issues.
in 2010, but at the time of Johnny
I'm surprised they
Pappas,
haven't invented like
it
a
was
monster
thriving resort.
for tourism to go up.
On August 18th, 1976, at the age of 54, Johnny Pappas was looking to sell his boat that he owned on Lake Mead. He told his wife he was going to meet a man interested in purchasing this boat at a local restaurant on Las Vegas Boulevard. After going to meet this person, 4 days later his car would be found in the parking lot of Circus Circus, with not a trace of him in sight.
Yeah.
In a typical mafia fashion, local authorities were quick to downplay the situation, stating that they had no reason to believe John Pappas's disappearance had anything to do with foul play. As one news report would state, because of his various associations, including those with underworld figures, police at first thought he may have been murdered. And in a rather jarring article, it seems the reason they came to this conclusion that he was A-OK still was because allegedly some witnesses saw him at a local gas station 2 days after he disappeared. As longtime local Las Vegas journalist John L. Smith had put it, the local newspapers
I
published
already watched
articles
this video.
sketching the sparse
No,
available
no.
facts. Johnny's mob connections were barely mentioned. A week after he disappeared, a local police sergeant lamely said that there was nothing to indicate Pappas was dead, and the story began to fade. By the next month, police were at least letting on that they weren't expecting to find him alive. While Pappas was obviously never heard from again, the reason many people point to him being the body in the barrel is the fact that he was on his way to sell his boat. While obviously this is a long shot, at the end of the day, the only thing I know for certain is that everybody will be keeping an eye out to see what secrets might be revealed at Lake Mead. This is Barely Sociable. Have a good night.
Yeah. That was an interesting video. Even though I wasn't there for half of it, but I didn't watch it as I mentioned. Dude, we can watch the next one, but I don't want to. I haven't watched it. I haven't pre-watched it. So I don't know what the hell it's about. I thought there was a notification. What is it? Is that an owl? Like, almost like some weird shit is gonna pop up on my feed. Not that there isn't anything weird already popping up. So as always, now we're going to like what I like to call it, the unrelated side of what the topic is, right? No, the topic was the environment. We really only explore two types of environment: the world here as we know it, and the ocean. The world as in we know it. I'm talking about like scientific terms, like what happens when this happens, what happens when this catastrophe happens, how does this worsen or help out the planet, blah 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 blah, right? And then we got to know interesting facts about the ocean. Now this is unrelated because it more moves away from the topic. But this is the portion where it really makes sense because this scary stream was for yesterday, right? Around this time. I just be like, oh well, I already covered whatever I needed to cover. Now it's time for like scary stories, but it still carries some semblance of like what should I say, relevance. There we go. So we're gonna watch this one now. It sounded just really good.
In past episodes, we have examined instances of mysterious hauntings which have been reported in the aftermath of high-profile accidents.
So the environment in this case is technically the setting,
and
it usually involves like hauntings.
An abandoned building in Manila that was once the scene of a tragic loss of human life. A location where the spirits of the dead continue to reach out to the living, forever in search of help.
Aliens, ghosts. That where that comes from? That's one of the scariest fucking ones out there. Next to the fucking where's the alien one that we watched? Oh my god, the Buffalo Ranch. I think it's the Buffalo Ranch, right? Where was it? Where was it? Was it this one, or was it another one?
Had two dogs. An Australian shepherd named Moona, who had once...
What's the other one? Clearview.
For 2023?
An electronics expert, and asked if he could take apart the stereo and TV set.
This is one of the scariest one.
Promising to put everything back together once he was finished. Despite his thoroughness, he found nothing, stating that the transmitter required to cause a signal of that intensity to go through every speaker was beyond the family's means to install. Needless to say, he cut his stopover short, and less than 6 months later, the Priestleys themselves would leave the ranch for good.
Yeah, this one.
Happened.
Yeah.
But then, at around 2 a.m., when the adults were sitting in the living room playing a game of Risk, all the lights in the house suddenly went out.
One of the scariest
and
fucking ones out there.
Metallic-sounding voice was heard to come through every single radio and TV speaker in the home.
This one scared me when I watched this.
Said,
"Attention. We have allowed you to remain. We have interfered with your lives very little. Do not cause us to take action which you will regret. Your friends will be instructed to remain silent concerning us."
Imagine, and also like I was, because I think I was on the topic too, like earlier in the day, talking about like how, you know, if you live in a place that you don't feel comfortable in, just move the fuck out and let the consequences settle in, right? Because it's not your fault. thought you bought a property that you thought you were gonna get assimilated into, but it turns out it's just not for you, right? I brought that up, and like, you know, I was thinking about that at the time when I watched this the other time, and like when that voice came out, I was just like, oh my god, that's so scary. It's like, holy shit! Imagine like living in a property where like aliens, quote unquote, or whatever the fuck it is they were experiencing, literally are like fucking trying to get you out of the house, trying to control every facet of your living. Like, hell no, right? I wouldn't be living in a property like that. I would just much rather cut the chase short and just move the fuck out. But yeah, the other one, the hospital one, is such a scary video because like essentially the whole premise is like you see shadow people, and I hate the concept of shadow people. At least when it comes to like dying
we
and
have examined instances of mysterious hauntings which have been reported in
So
the
let's just watch
aftermath
this,
of
yeah.
high-profile accidents and infamous crimes.
As I get my water
This
bottle.
week, we will be visiting one such location, an abandoned building in Manila that was once the scene of a tragic loss of human life, a location where the spirits of the dead continue to reach out to the living, forever in search of help.
Yeah, I wonder how this is gonna come up. Too long. Too long. Why is it wet?
In January of 1981, it was announced by the government of the Philippines that a large amount of funding had been set aside for an extensive national media
I don't think
project.
there's anything TOS, so I can just zoom in on this.
This proposal was the brainchild of the First Lady at the time, Imelda Marcos, and was specifically designed to raise the global profile of the country's film industry. It would involve the creation of a new international film festival, the foundation of a laboratory to develop new filming techniques, and the creation of a permanent film archive. Key to the success of the whole program would be a national media center constructed in the heart of the capital, which would play host to all the other individual components. But whilst the majority of those who read the proposals were enthusiastic, doubts surrounding the projected cost and timeframes were soon raised.
Interesting.
In order to stay within the $25 million budget and meet the date of the new film festival, it would be necessary to complete construction of the media center within 12 months.
Ooh, that's fast.
Ignorant of her critics, project leader Betty Benitez announced the employment of 4,000 laborers who would immediately commence work on the media center. Continually working in 3 shifts over a rolling 24-hour period, the workforce threw themselves into the task, quickly silencing those who had been skeptical of the timeline. The building's main lobby, which should normally have taken up to 6 weeks to construct, was ultimately completed within a mere 72 hours. But on November the 17th,
you are going to have yourself a Hyatt Regency. Oh, before I show what that is, let me see if there's none. This is just like the aftermath, right? Essentially, this thing fell on people, but everything was clean. So those pictures are like, after everything is cleaned, right? You literally get shit like that happening. If you build a building at a breakneck pace, I said pace. Oh my god, why am I don't know what's up with my English. My English is just like today, and it's like the only language I speak besides Spanish. No, yeah, when you're working at a breakneck pace, literally, like you get fucking shit
Just
like
as
that
the
occurring.
project was nearing completion, the dangers inherent in working at such a breakneck pace would be brutally exposed.
Because you get people like cutting corners and shit.
At around 3 a.m., several of the building's newly constructed upper floors collapsed.
Yeah.
Along with the temporary reinforcement
No
which
way.
had been put in place to support them. Hundreds of workers either fell to their deaths, were crushed beneath the falling debris, or became impaled upon the jagged metal remains of the scaffolding they had been working on.
That's not good.
The collapse had been caused by a miscalculation in the amount of concrete which had been poured that evening, and as the surviving workers ran to help, a further danger presented itself.
Yeah, that's so misfortunate.
In addition to having been too heavy for the scaffolding to support, the excess amount of concrete had not been able to dry as quickly as it would otherwise have done. Many of the would-be rescuers soon found themselves trapped alongside their immobilized colleagues.
Oh my god.
As the concrete they were walking through began to harden around their legs. Upon her arrival at the site in the aftermath of the accident, Benitez had quickly given orders for the military to cordon off the scene, stating that a total media blackout should be enforced.
Wow.
And it soon became apparent that her main priority was to ensure construction resumed as soon as possible,
rather than
affecting the rescue of the dead and dying.
Wow.
When it became clear that there was no rapid way to free those trapped within the concrete, orders were given to remove them from the site by any means possible. Trapped limbs were severed, with labourers carried screaming from the rubble, the rudimentary tourniquets which had been applied failing to stop their severe bleeding.
Did the concrete bond to their skin, or what's going on? Because, like, I don't know. I would imagine you can, right, chisel them out. There's no need for tourniquets. Because unless, like, the concrete bonded to their skin.
Bodies of those who had died which were deemed too difficult to retrieve were similarly dismembered, or simply left in situ, with fresh concrete swiftly poured over them. Despite the loss of an estimated 170 workers,
oh my god,
construction was quickly resumed with a ruthless and brutal efficiency.
Again, the human environment. As a result, right here.
The centre went on to open in time for its maiden film festival, which took place during the final week of January 1982, with those in attendance having little to no idea that the foundations they were walking upon contained the remains of those who had died during its construction.
That sucks.
Almost immediately, rumours and stories about mysterious happenings which were taking place during the film festival started to circulate amongst the local community. The organisers received calls from a number of female visitors who complained that their dresses had been stained with what appeared to be wet concrete, or in some cases, blood. But despite a number of methodical checks of the building, no visible weaknesses in the concrete could be found, or any secretions which resembled the marks seen on the dresses. Alongside this, a number of ambulances ended up being called to attend to some of the guests, who had suffered what presented as temporary or passing medical episodes. Several visitors reported feeling extreme chills that were so overwhelming in their nature that they incapacitated them for a short period of time.
That's interesting.
In other cases, festival attendees stated that they had experienced a sudden and overpowering crushing sensation on their chests.
I mean, this is a film festival, right? Could these people maybe not be using drugs? Be under the influence of other, say, substances or something? I mean, unless it's, like, as formal as they present. But even then, you know, a lot of, like, people that are, like, how do I say it? Essentially, like, Hollywood stars, right? They use drugs. They're hardcore like that. I don't know. I'm just taking this with a grain of salt,
These
right?
patients
This
had
is
fallen to the
too
ground, crying out
grand
that they
for
were
this
being
to be
trapped or
happening.
pinned, before the symptoms then subsided just as quickly as they had begun. So disconcerting were these reports that when the building had closed one evening, Betty Benitez quickly arranged for several priests to attend the site. These holy men were ordered to identify and neutralize whatever was causing the discomfort experienced by those attending the film festival. The following morning, the priests left, stating they had done all they could to appease the spirits of those who had died during construction, but that they could not remain any longer. Despite these issues,
they did
the
nothing.
centre's inaugural film festival was later deemed to be a complete success, having attracted high-profile celebrities from all around the globe.
If it was a
It also led
success,
to a massive expansion of the Philippines
these
film
things that
industry,
happened there,
with movies exported
happened
around
to
the
be,
world,
coincidences,
and several awards being
or just
received
actual
by the
events that
country's
just
actors.
happened. That's it. Nothing.
But this
linking
success
them
would
to
be
a
somewhat
fucking
short-lived when the government pulled the funding which had initially been
subset of
promised
events, right?
after the festival.
It's
The
tragic
building
what happened
would
to the
go on be
people that
abandoned for
fucking
lengthy
died in
periods
there.
of time, where it soon began to fall
You know?
derelict due to the poor construction techniques which had been employed. Alongside her creation, Betty Benitez would also be the victim of an unexpected and harrowing degree of misfortune. One evening, whilst being driven home from her office by a colleague, the car she was travelling in had left the carriageway and collided with an adjoining wall.
Holy shit.
When police later arrived at the scene, the man who had been driving the vehicle was recovered completely uninjured, whereas Benitez was found alongside him in the passenger seat, crushed to death by the vehicle's crumpled interior. One bizarre incident reported to have transpired inside the building was also rumoured to have taken place during the inaugural film festival. After closing, as the cleaning crews were tidying up from the day's events, several armed men arrived on site. It was explained that these were members of the presidential support group, sweeping the building ahead of a visit from the First Lady, which was taking place the following morning. But not long after the security staff had arrived, there was a sudden commotion, and the cleaners were herded into one of the theatres at gunpoint. A head count was carried out, before it was then demanded that whoever had been playing tricks on the government officers step forward. It was only once they had been released that the cleaners caught sight of one of the agents being led off site in a distressed state by his colleagues. They later learned that the bodyguard had been checking around the lower levels of the building when he caught sight of a movement in the darkness ahead of him. On issuing a challenge, he observed a shadowy figure running away and immediately drew his weapon and gave chase. He followed the figure along several corridors when it suddenly disappeared directly through a closed door. Approaching the doorway, torch and sidearm in hand, the agent had tried the door handle, but found that it was locked. Having used his radio to call for backup, he then kicked the door open and burst into the room, only to find that it was completely empty. Standing
this
alone
guy was
in
going
the dark
crazy.
Space, his torch beam flitting
Because,
from wall to
when
wall,
you start seeing stuff like
the
that,
security
it
officer
usually
suddenly
means
experienced a freezing sensation, which completely paralyzed him.
it could be like
Then
a
out of
temporary
nowhere,
sort of like
a
episodic
disembodied
thing.
and hushed voice whispered a single word directly into one of his ears. Too long. The Filipino word for help. As more officers arrived to assist him, they found their colleague backed into one corner of the empty room, his gun up and waving around from side to side, scared out of his wits. Following a major earthquake which rocked the country in the summer of 1990, the Manila Film Center was abandoned altogether and stood unoccupied for many years. Throughout this period, groups of local youths would regularly go onto the site, exploring the
this
vacant
happens
theatres
like
and
the
seeing if
King
anything of value had
houses,
been left
right?
behind.
There's stuff like that, people break in.
One of the most haunting tales associated with the building involved one such group, who had snuck inside during
That's
daylight
unfortunate,
hours
but, like,
and began to roam the empty corridors. But as the boys
I really
ventured
have no
deeper
clue how
and
you would be
deeper
able
into the
to keep
media
up
center's interior,
the place you don't really
they
utilize,
began
right?
to notice the temperature dropping rapidly around them. The daylight streaming in from the broken windows above gradually seemed to dim, until they could only see just a few feet in front of them. It was at this point that they noticed what seemed to be some sort of viscous substance, gently flowing down the walls either side of them.
What the fuck?
Moving closer, they realized to their horror that this material was wet concrete, with the main panels of the walls appearing to be in the process of melting and dripping down.
That's kind of cliche, I'm not gonna lie.
Turning
the
to
ghosts
flee,
forming
the group
wet
suddenly heard
concrete.
a chilling scream and turned back to see one of their number staring down in complete shock at the ground below him.
It's becoming
Following
wet concrete.
the boys' gaze, they were horrified to see a human arm somehow reaching up out of the
Oh my
solid
god.
concrete floor,
Okay, that's
its
cool.
hands
That's a
wrapped
cool
tightly
story now.
around the boy's leg.
Holy shit.
The disembodied limb was stained with dark blood, where it had apparently been sliced open.
Oh my god, that's like some shit you would hear in like a zombie movie, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, it's just like fucking zombies reaching out for you, like underneath like a gravesite, just like grabbing onto you, right? Like that. That is so cool.
With portions of grey bone exposed and covered by drying cement.
Jesus.
Crying out in fear, the youth had yanked himself free from his apparent captor and then joined the rest of his friends in fleeing the building as quickly as they could. It was only later, after they were back in the sunlight and with the film centre now several miles behind them, that they finally stopped to pause for breath. The others watched in horror as the boy in question pulled up the leg of his jeans to reveal a series of livid and purplish bruises left on his skin, perfectly resembling a human handprint.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It would not be until late 2001 that the Manila Film Center was once again being used for entertainment purposes.
So it actually got
In December of that
repurposed.
year, it was leased by a company named the Amazing Philippines Theatre, who would utilize it on a regular basis to perform shows. But with their tenure, rumors soon began to circulate within the city that a new ghost had taken up residence within the haunted building.
A
Not
new
long
ghost.
after performances of the amazing show commenced at the film center, the body of a young female performer was found lying on the steps of the building.
Yeah, it's horrible.
The police investigation into her death was limited and ultimately unsuccessful, with detectives stating they believed the matter to be drugs related. But ever since that time, the apparition of an unknown female has been repeatedly sighted in and around the building. On some occasions, rehearsals or live shows had to be halted when performers complained that an unknown woman had walked on stage, only to then disappear again. And these sightings were not only limited to the building's interior, with a recurring incident having been reported by several of the city's taxi drivers. On more than one occasion, passing cabs have been flagged down by a local female standing outside the centre in the early hours of the morning, who appears to have suffered minor injuries. The lone passenger looks upset and intimidated, asking the driver if he will take her to a local hospital to seek treatment for her injuries.
It sounds like your normal like
At some
ghost
point
story.
during their journey, sometimes even midway through a conversation, this young
Hold on. Whoa, what a burp. Hecho paranormal espera. Presenciaste y te hizo creer más en el fantasma. No, there's like one. Is it hold on. La mala hora. It's not her, right? It's just like you see her, you get fucked. Oh my god. No, it's like there's one. It's like I forget. There's like there's
I need to find the best way.
The Earth is a gigantic ball of semi-molten rock with a heart of iron as hot as the surface of the sun. Titanic.
Oh my god! I'm like, what video is that? Ew! I hate that. There we go. Yeah, no, I was thinking of a different one. Fuck. There's in a lot of different cultures. They have a similar story. Like, oh, some woman comes up in front of the road. They beg you to take her somewhere, and you do. You look at the back of your seat. There's nobody there. Then when you get home, you die.
Young woman will simply vanish.
It's very common. Very, very common.
Both at the time of the Manila Film Center disaster and in the years that followed. The Marcos regime denied that any workers had been buried within the building foundations.
Ooh,
but in the aftermath of their ousting from power, it proved impossible to verify their claims, with no trustworthy or accurate records to be found regarding the incident.
Jesus, that's not good.
Testimony from the families of those involved and the few photos taken by journalists who were able to gain access to the scene suggest that many labourers did indeed lose their lives. The stories that have emerged from the building since it was constructed all seem to suggest the same argument, that the brutality and horror inflicted upon those dying in the incident by their employers was so incomprehensible, their spirits could never move on from what occurred. They forever remain trapped within the concrete walls and foundations they had worked so long and so hard to construct, constrained between this world and the next, reaching out in search of anyone who can offer the one thing they were ultimately denied. Help.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cut and dry. Holy shit. Usually the endings are more... Yeah, that's sad. This is a sad story. Imagine getting stuck in, like, concrete. And then, like, like a doctor just telling you, hey, you won't live this. We have to kill you. The only way you'll get out of this. That'd be really sad. You know, so that's the setting, right? The Manila Film Center. The Youth Centre. But yeah, next up is 3 horrifying Aokigahara stories. I translate Japanese stories, new stories every time. Why did I pick this one? Okay. Oh, I remember. So, I guess this is like a forest story, right? We should no, we should watch like a forest animations or whatever. Forest story animations. We'll watch. We'll listen to these stories in a moment. Right now, I want to watch stuff. Oh, 3. No, not even 3. Just scary forest stories. Animated. What is this? I really don't. IMR scary stories are really like they're really well animated, but like, god damn, do they chug out a shit ton? I don't know where stories. One C Entertainment. Sounds kind of like. We're literally gonna be here all night. Like I said, tomorrow I'm not gonna be live. 28 minutes. Hospital horror? I mean, hospitals have their own setting. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this one.
Talk to nicely.
My wife and I are sitting on the front porch after a long day of moving furniture and boxes into our new house. We were tired, red-faced, and sweating after sharing the burden between the two of us. The sun was setting on the horizon as we sipped our warm beers,
you know, sometimes it's
and
not
looked out over the landscape
easy
of
to
our newly
experience
acquired
what
ranch.
certain of these stories
Fields
say.
stretched off into the distance as far as the eye could see. There was not a neighbor in sight for miles. The
This
cows were
Skinwalker
grazing,
story,
looking
it's like-
unhappy, their tails hanging straight
I
down
don't
as they
believe
ignored the
Skinwalker.
fresh grass all around them.
I
figured
believe
they were
that a
just
lot of
upset
people
from the
are like
long move.
culturally appropriating.
Why do you
term
think they needed so
Skinwalker
many
and,
rocks?
like,
My wife asked, taking
know,
a sip of her
idea.
beer. It was
That
the
is a
elephant in the
PNG, but
room,
that's cool.
so to speak. And I had to admit, I was curious about it as well.
But yeah,
Every door
but
in
I
the
can't
house
speak
had a
on that because
deadbolt on it,
you know not
inside
part of my culture.
and out. Not only that, but the windows were shielded by thick iron bars. The old owners had left long before we could ask them about it.
But
The
I do
folks
know
who
how it
lived here
feels
before
because
were probably paranoid about home invasions so far from the city.
there's like stories of people seeing like the Llorona in like fucking what, like Washington DC. Or some bullshit like that. It's like, what the fuck? I don't know. I can't. Hold on. Or rather, USA. Because like there was a moment like in like these stories that a lot of people like saying on Reddit where like the Llorona was just literally fucking being seen in like Wyoming, Washington DC, places where like it's like the whole story is just like unrelated completely, right? It's like, why the fuck is the Llorona like? Why is La Llorona like in Wyoming? Like, what the fuck? It's like,
We'll take them down and I'll fill the screw holes with wood putty.
like, what are people
We'll paint
doing
them
with
over
these
and they'll be
stories?
good as new.
Besides just
You
saying, I
wanted to
saw a
redo the
woman
trim
fucking
anyway.
walk into the
And the bars on the
highway or
windows?
something and cry.
That'll
"Where's
take
my
a bit more
children?"
work.
Whatever.
But I can get it done before the weekend. I'll just have to run over to the hardware store to grab a few things. My wife was no longer paying
The
attention.
hardware store?
She was staring at some point far off in the distance. What's that? She asked, pointing. I followed her finger and looked to see a large gray wolf moving in the fields.
Oh my god.
It seemed to be stalking deliberately toward
Ew.
us, marching at a steady, quick pace.
It's like if somebody was
It
like
came to a
dressed in
fence
like a
and
fucking
did the
costume.
strangest thing. Instead of leaping over it or burrowing under it, as I'd expected, it stood up on two legs like a person,
Ew.
grasped the loose corner of the wire fencing, and pulled it up, ducking between the strands and stepping through, one leg after the other. It was exactly how I would have done it.
That
Once
is
it was on the
uncanny.
other side, it went back on four legs and started its progress toward us again. Then it looked up and saw us staring at it. The gray wolf stayed still for a few
Ya lo hice en
seconds,
la mañana.
then disappeared in the tall grass
Lo hice en la
suddenly.
mañana.
It was just gone. It didn't dive into the grass or duck down. It was there,
Exercise in the morning.
and then a
she's
moment
like, "Go do
later,
exercise," and I'm
it
like,
was
"What the
just
fuck do you
gone,
mean?"
vanished in the blink of an eye. The two of us sat uneasily on the porch, and I stood up to look in the distance, trying to spot the creature, but it was nowhere to be found. I'm going inside. You should come too, my wife said, sounding nervous. We went in and locked the doors at the front and back of the house. The bars stayed on the windows after that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And my
I
wife
would
didn't
fucking
mention the
keep that.
deadbolts on the doors in the house again either. The two of us went to bed that night with little talk between us. A big difference from the ecstatic chatter that had been the norm all day prior to the event with the wolf. Or whatever that thing was. I got the feeling wolf was not quite the right word. That night, something else even more disturbing happened to us both. I woke up in the early hours of the morning.
I know this one has less
3:30
atmosphere,
a.m.,
right? This
according
story?
to the bedside alarm clock.
But
When I looked next to me in the
I held
bed
the
and saw my
illustrator
wife's spot was empty,
fucking
I
showed
became
the
immediately
Daria.
concerned for her safety.
Depicted
Where could
it.
she have gone at this time of night, I wondered. That was when I heard her voice calling to me from outside the window, asking for me to let her in. Her cries for help were muffled through the glass, and I lifted the heavy old window pane up to hear her better. "What are you doing out there?" I asked, worried about the wolf we'd seen earlier. "I must have been sleepwalking," she said dreamily. "The front door locked behind me somehow. You have to let me back in. Please. It's cold out here." "I'll be right down," I said, without thinking about how impossible all of that was. I was only concerned for her safety at that moment, and she had been known to sleepwalk occasionally, so that part seemed to make sense. I raced down the stairs in my boxers and grasped the front door in my hand. Reaching up to turn the lock, I was startled to hear a voice behind me.
Yeah?
"What are you doing?" my wife asked. I jumped at the sound, my heartbeat quickening.
Yeah, what
But
the
what
heck?
terrified me even more was what I had just seen outside. Given the time frame it had taken me to get downstairs, it was impossible that it had been her. It was like someone else had been out there, wearing her skin and speaking in her voice. Looking at the woman standing in front of me, I had no doubt it was Christine, my wife. Panting, I walked over to her and hugged her tightly. "What's wrong?" she asked. I didn't answer, afraid she would think I was losing my mind. Some things we don't share with anyone, not even with our significant others. We take them to our grave.
Oh
Afraid
my god,
that if
he
we
was
speak of them
cheating.
out
This
loud,
whole
it
story
will
is a
make them
cheating
true,
story.
and
What
it
an
will make the
asshole,
source of the
man.
impossible things return. So instead, I just took her hand and led her up the stairs, looking back nervously over my shoulder at the front door, waiting for the sound of a key turning in the lock, or the sound of it being broken down by powerful forces beyond my control. Instead, there was a gentle knock, polite almost at first. But then a fist began to pound against the front door of the house, louder and louder, more and more insistently. My wife stopped, turning around to look at me on the stairs. "Who could that be at this time of night?" she asked. "Just ignore it. Let's get to bed. They'll go away, eventually." After a few moments of hesitation, she turned around and began going up the stairs once more, taking a couple nervous looks back as she did. We kept walking up the stairs as the pounding continued, devolving into steady scratching noises that didn't cease until daybreak. "What were you doing down in the basement last night?" my wife asked at the breakfast table the next morning. Neither one of us mentioned the sounds at the door the night before. We were both trying to act like it had never happened. In the light of the morning, it seemed like a shared hallucination. A bad dream brought on by warm beer and too much time spent moving boxes without enough assistance. "In the basement?" "I wasn't in the basement," I told her. "Yeah, you were. You were calling my name, asking me to come down there." I looked at her with concern. "When was this?" "Right before I found you at the front door. I figured I just missed you, that you found whatever you were looking for down in the basement and went into the kitchen for a snack or something. But then I found you by the front door." "I was never in the basement last night." She looked at me, puzzled. "Of course you were. Who else would have been calling for me from down there?" I debated telling her what I had seen outside and decided I probably should. We were clearly dealing with something very strange here, and we needed to be on the same team.
Story. I
if we
like
were
how
going
they
to
drew
figure it out.
everything.
"Christine, did you go outside at all last night?" "No. What does that have to do with..." "Okay, so here's the thing. I saw you outside. At the same time when you were going
like
down to the basement, you were calling to me from out front, saying you had been
54 minutes.
sleepwalking
Well,
and
only
you were
watched like
locked
one
out.
of these in this
That's
one.
why I was at the door. I never went down to the basement, and I don't think that was really you outside either. I think there's something else causing all this to happen. What the hell could cause that to happen?
Yeah.
I opened my mouth to answer when there was a polite knocking at the door. The two of us sat dead silent for a few moments, unsure what to do. The knocking came again, and I heard a man's voice, muffled through the door, saying,
"There's a car here. Maybe they're out in the fields. Should we just leave it on the doorstep?"
A woman's voice asked.
"I don't like being here any more than you do, but that seems a bit rude. Maybe we should come back."
Christine and I both stood up, sensing that this was not the same entity from the night before. I don't know how I could tell, but I just could. This wasn't an evil presence. It was just some neighbors coming by to welcome us. And they sounded like they might know something more than we did about the ranch and its mysteries. I opened the front door and saw a man and woman with their backs turned, walking away from us. They spun around when they heard the sound of us opening up.
"Oh, hi there. We're the Turnbulls.
We live down the road, technically next door, as if there is such a thing out here. But we do share an easement with you to access the river. Jack takes the cattle down that way sometimes for a change of scenery." The man put his arm around his wife's shoulder and whispered something in her ear. She abruptly stopped talking, realizing that she was rambling on nervously.
"Sharon, I'm sure they don't want to get into all that, but we just wanted to stop by and welcome you to the neighborhood, so to speak. It's nice to have another couple living next door again. This place has been empty for so long."
My wife and I looked at each other with surprise. As far as we knew, the place had been occupied right up until our arrival. It hadn't shown signs of disrepair or neglect, so we'd had no reason to think otherwise.
"Really?"
No wonder the place was such a bargain. How long was it empty for? The man and woman shared a look.
"Oh, you know,
Well, I want to know
not
the
that
tea right
long.
here.
A few years. Anyways, we just wanted to bring this casserole. We have a few errands to run, but it was great meeting you both. Come on by our place anytime. We're number 56981. The next driveway on your side, up that way,"
the man said, hooking his thumb eastward. I had never seen anyone introduce themselves and run so quickly. I tried not to take it personally.
"It was nice to meet you both,"
the woman said, taking a few quick steps towards my wife and handing her the casserole dish. You can keep that dish, by the way. It's Pyrex, great for casseroles. She backed up to join her husband, looking around the property nervously as she did.
"Hey, can I ask you something?"
The two of them looked ready to run back to their car, but they stopped and nodded, shifting on their feet anxiously and waiting for me to speak.
"Have you ever seen anything, how should I put this? There's been a couple of weird occurrences since we moved in, and I was just wondering if you could tell us anything. Is this place haunted? Is that why it was so cheap? I can tell you guys are nervous. Just give us something to work with, please. We're getting a little freaked out."
The woman looked pleadingly at her husband. He nodded to her, and she went back to the car and got in the passenger seat where she sat, darting her eyes around from side to side.
"What exactly did you see?"
The man asked.
"Wait, no, don't tell me. It's better if we don't speak of them. They know when you talk about them. It's better if we don't." "Well then, how do we get rid of them?" "You don't. These things have been around a lot longer than you or me. My wife and I get our share of strange events on the ranch next door too, but not as bad as here. This place, well, there's something here that makes it special. And not in a good way, I'm sorry to say. I'd tell you more, but it would only make things worse. It always does."
There was a sound of knuckles rapping against the glass, and I looked to see his wife banging on the car window, looking with wide eyes at us and pointing into the distance, towards the fields. My eyes followed where she was pointing, and I looked to see the large gray wolf was back, and it was moving towards us again.
"I told you, We're not meant to speak of them. I need to go. The two of you should decide soon if you want to stay. This place will change you, and it will take things from you. You only get so long to decide. If you want to see what the changes will be, it will already be too late. Trust me. With that, he turned away and went back to his car. He started the engine and drove off much quicker than I would have thought safe on the dirt driveway, swerving and leaving a cloud of dust hanging in the air around us, obstructing my view for a few seconds. When I turned around again, the wolf was much, much closer. It was about 50 yards away and closing in fast. It was looking at me intently. My wife was running back towards the house, yelling
What
at me
was
to
your
come.
wife doing outside?
But I was frozen, watching the wolf as it stood on its hind legs again. Not a wolf. Stop calling it a wolf. It's not a wolf. It's just trying to fool you into thinking that's what it is. But it's so much more dangerous than that. I tried to take a step, but my legs wouldn't budge. My eyes were locked on the wolf as it began to stalk towards me. No longer an animal, but something else, wearing an animal suit. The ancient leathery skinned humanoid beneath the wolf armor could be glimpsed occasionally as it strode like a hunter in my direction, taking long steps, moving low to the ground. The fur pieces were simply strapped onto it like clothing, the wolf head strapped on like a hat.
What are you doing? Get in here!
My wife yelled one more time, and my foot suddenly started to move. As soon as it did, I found I was unfrozen and finally able to start running, and not a second too soon. The house was close, but the thing was fast. When it saw me beginning to run, it became a wolf again.
Three different stories in one.
The idea that it was anything but that seemed ludicrous as I watched it race towards me on all fours, its snapping jaws dripping saliva as it drove to cut me off. This thing was a massive gray wolf through and through. It could be nothing but that. And yet my eyes had begged otherwise just a moment before. If not for my wife, it might have gotten me. But she saw what was happening and took a large rock we had been using as a doorstop and threw it straight at the thing's head. It missed, hitting the beast in the shoulder instead, but it was enough to drive it back for a brief second, which was all I needed. I ran into the house and slammed the door shut behind me. An instant later, the scratching began again. Soon, there was another one at the back door, scratching it as well. The sounds continued for hours. When the noises stopped and I finally ventured outside again, I found that 3 of the cattle had been killed. The others were scared out of their wits, huddled together in a corner of the field near to the house. Their eyes darted around the fields, reminding me of how the neighbors had looked as they scanned our property for the things lurking in the shadows. I was beginning to suspect we were not going to be able to stay in this place much longer.
Yeah.
Even if we could survive, this was no way to live. That night, my wife and I sat in the living room with all the blinds and curtains drawn, discussing what we would do. The house wouldn't sell quickly. That much was obvious based on the neighbors' statements. The two of us decided we would leave in the morning. We would stay in a motel until we found an apartment to rent, sacrificing all of our investment in the house. Even if we put it up for sale again, it would be a long, long time before we made any portion of our money back. But it was too dangerous and too terrifying to stay.
I'm going to bed,
my wife said, looking tired.
Come upstairs soon, okay? I don't want to be alone.
I'll be up in a minute, I told her. I just want to grab a glass of water. She nodded sleepily and went up the stairs slowly, looking depressed. We had dreamed about this move for so long, and now it was all coming to ruins. I felt sad about it too. I went into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. After drinking it down in one long gulp, I decided I needed another. It had been a long day, and I'd been too distracted to drink anything. A noise came from upstairs, a scraping sound like claws. Setting down the glass, I turned around and listened closely.
What's that noise?
Christine? She didn't reply. I took a few steps across the linoleum floor of the kitchen before calling out again. Once again, there was no answer. By the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, my heart was pounding so fast and hard, I felt like it would beat right out of my chest. I opened my mouth to call her name one more time when I saw it. The wolf that wasn't a wolf strode on 2 legs across the gap at the top of the stairs.
then disappeared around the corner, heading towards my wife. It was so quick that I thought for a moment I could have imagined it. Just a gray blur that was gone in an instant.
Oh, wow,
if not
that's
for
scary.
the fact that it looked down the stairs at me and smiled, its long canines gleaming in the light. Its eyes were pure blackness. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could, terrified of what it would do to her. When I got to the second floor, I looked down the hall to see all of the doors were closed. It was as if the whole thing had really been just my imagination. Taking an unsteady step towards the bedroom, my heartbeat did not slow down even slightly.
Oh
my hand was shaking
I hate
as I
that
reached
noise
for the
this
doorknob, turning it
video is
and
making.
entering the master bedroom. I entered hesitantly, finding the room dark and my wife asleep in bed. Part of me wanted to wake her up, but for some reason I didn't. It will be fine, just go to bed, my irrational thoughts said. My pounding heart began to slow,
Irrational, you mean
and
rational?
my eyelids grew heavy. This is fine, my mind told me. Everything is fine. Just go to sleep now. Trying not to think of what I had seen just moments before, I climbed into bed, getting in next to my wife and shivering while my body warmed up beneath the sheets. There was a soft sound of padding footsteps outside the bedroom door. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Something wanted to get inside the bedroom, and a strange, foreign-sounding part of me wanted to let it in.
What the fuck? Cool. Okay. Well, that's one of them. We're gonna only listen to one of these stories per video because it's a lot to listen to, right? Let's begin with this one. So yeah, that last one was really good and atmospheric because I guess it sets in the setting as a, you know, like a ranch essentially, right? And the whole premise is that the environment, you know, these creatures in the environment are just fucking stalking them, fucking making their life, at least within the first 2 days, a living hell, right? Yeah. And this next one is going to be. I have no clue. Like, this is just a forest story about exploring the
scariest places on
yeah.
Earth. Its terrifying reputation comes from its notoriety as a suicide hotspot.
Yeah.
The Sea of Trees is said to be the final resting place for hundreds each year. Located at the base of Mount Fuji, Aokigahara plays a role in Japanese mythology and is considered to be one of the most haunted places on Earth. Ghost sightings and paranormal activity doesn't account for all of the terrifying goings-on there. The forest is easy to get lost in, and GPS rarely works inside. There are reports of the string rope used to help people navigate their way in and out of Aokigahara being deliberately cut.
Oh wow.
The Japan Times reported mysterious screamings coming from inside the forest.
Yeah.
Evil spirits are said to reside in the Sea of Trees, calling lost individuals
So like
to
I
their doom.
kind of do know and don't know much about this
Buddhist
place.
priests
All I know is
set
that like a lot of
shrines
people go
and
here to
altars
like,
in the forest to combat
unfortunately,
these evil spirits.
end their lives, and it's
Of course, the
unfortunate.
forest is most famous
Yeah.
for its tragic encounters of dead bodies and cursed objects. Strange symbols with dolls nailed to trees have also been discovered. Aokigahara is not a place
The demon
you
of
want to find yourself
Aokigahara.
lost in. Here are 3 stories which may make you consider that suicide isn't solely responsible for the deaths in the notorious forest.
He's partly right. It's also the connotation of the place as well. It leads many to go there.
After graduation, I joined an advertising company, and I was made project leader. Each day was busier than the last. I was under enormous pressure as the project leader. Moreover, the results I were getting were not favorable, and the atmosphere was terrible at work. I guess I was mentally and physically exhausted. One day, all the stress and pressure built to the point of explosion.
Holy
I left
shit.
work without permission, got in my car, and hit the road. I didn't know where I was going, but I just wanted to disappear that day.
Wow, that's
I had nothing
sad.
to be happy for. No family, no partner. Death would be easier than this, I thought. Death would bring an end. Or a new beginning. These thoughts swirled around my head as I drove. I didn't realize
Like
it
again,
at the time,
this is like the really loose area of like the scary stream.
but it was as if something was pulling me towards Aokigahara.
Hopefully nothing
I didn't
crazy
even notice
happens,
that I was heading
and this is
towards
just like a typical scary story.
I stopped the car, and without hesitation, I walked.
So the way I'm
towards
coping
sea
right now
trees.
is like math. I don't know.
It
I'm
is
like
said
on
that if you
Desmos, just
enter
trying to graph
Aokigahara,
ghosts inside.
then you will get
that
disoriented
necessarily.
quickly and lose any sense of direction. Nevertheless, I walked in. I didn't really want to die. I just wanted to be at peace. I just wanted things to be easier. For a while, I walked down the path towards the forest. I was lost in thought as I walked. Oi! I heard a voice call. It surprised me. The voice came from a man in his 40s, wearing work fatigues. I assumed he was a volunteer who patrolled the forest in order to prevent suicide attempts. This area is off limits to the public, sir. Oh, sorry, I replied dreamily. Are you lost? Are you on your own? I don't. Follow me, sir, he stated in an authoritative tone. I was worried that I was going to be arrested for trespassing. I obediently followed. I followed in silence for about 20 minutes. We were heading deeper and deeper into Aokigahara. I started to get worried. I thought we would head to the exit, but where we were going deeper into the forest. I could see something up ahead. It looked like a kind of rest area.
Yeah.
A log cabin in the middle of the dense forest.
Look at how beautiful it looks,
a log cabin
though.
in the middle of the suicide
Unfortunately,
forest. I was more than a little
it's dense with like
surprised to see
I guess those are like
the
trees
man
and
opened the
twigs
door
and
for me
stuff.
said, "Get in." I walked in, and he followed. From the outside, it looked like a rest area, but when I went in, it looked like someone had been living in there. There was a kitchen area and a single bed. The ranger pointed to a little wooden stool and said, "Sit." I sat on the chair. It was very unbalanced. It felt like it could collapse at any moment. I realized that the chair was handmade. How weird. I wondered if it was made from the trees of the suicide forest. All around me were these rickety handmade items. A chest of drawers, the bed. They didn't look professionally made either. Something about this unnerved me. It was a red flag. The man sat down on the bed opposite me and abruptly asked, "You want to die?"
What the heck?
There was an awkward silence.
Yeah.
I stared at the man's face. He was smiling. I was seriously doubting if this was a forester, or a patrolman, or a volunteer or anything. I massively regretted going into this hut alone with this man. Why didn't I think? Did you hear that? I heard myself ask. I didn't hear anything, the man opposite me said bluntly. It was no mistake. It was a voice. A female voice. I tried to place the voice as the man opposite me stared at me with interest. It was coming from beneath my feet. I stared at the floorboards. Between the cracks in the floorboards, eyes appeared out of the darkness.
Oh my god, that's scary.
Please! A woman screamed at me.
Shut up!
The man roared. He flew into a rage and started stomping on the floor.
The heck?
He grabbed the
Yeah,
hatchet
that
from
just doesn't sound
threw over
normal.
the table, pulled up the floorboards, and marched down some mud steps.
It's like a I got kidnapped in like the forest
I saw no
story.
chance to escape, and I ran as fast as I could. The woman was screaming. I couldn't look back. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," I shouted. I couldn't see where I was going, and I had tears in my eyes. I ran until the sun set. There in the darkness, I realized I couldn't run anymore. A flashlight was scanning the area up ahead. I shouted, "Hey, I'm over here!" with my last amount of breath. I was slipping in and out of consciousness.
What the
I had to
heck?
get the
Oh,
word
yeah,
out.
yeah, because, like,
maybe that woman could be
chase.
saved. Then I realized I may have made a grave mistake. How could I have been so stupid? I thought in despair. How could I know that the person with the flashlight isn't the man from the hut? I don't want to die here, I thought. And that was my last thought before I lost consciousness. I woke in a hospital bed. I was told I was found by a man patrolling the area, a police officer. I asked him about the hut in the forest. The doctors told me that due to stress at work and getting lost in the forest, I could have been seeing things.
Yeah.
The policeman stated that it was not uncommon for people to suffer visions in the suicide forest. The police didn't even search for that hut. They agreed with the doctor that it must have been a hallucination. I pray that
That's
it's true,
sad.
but I know what I saw. It was too real. We all know that a lot of people choose to end their lives in that forest, but I can't help but think that not all of them are suicides.
Yeah, no, like, definitely, like, in places notorious for that, there's definitely other things happening. Whether it be, like, killings or, like, dark tourism, right? And those two are still bad. We all don't know what dark tourism is. I mean, partly I'm doing that right now, unfortunately. Dark tourist. It's like dark tourism should not be like. I recommend this video.
Death has.
Yeah. But yeah, as you see the setting there, the environment, definitely, at least in this story, if we take this story to be fiction, which I don't think we can. Well, then again, does it link to where they got the stories? No. No, it does not. It just says he got these stories, right? I take it that obviously he got them from a source, right? The point is, the way they describe the forest, there's not that many details actually. But at least the way it was set up earlier in the video, before the first story, it's a place of like, you know, where like demise comes to be, right? Is that the right way to phrase it? No, what? Demise. Yeah, there we go. It's like Google's like demise. You mean demisexual? And it's like what? Anyhow, yeah, no, it's crazy because like, this forest on the outside looks pretty fucking beautiful, but like in the inside, once you get to know the place and what it actually is very fucking horrifying. It's like the Paris catacombs, right? It's like the idea of catacombs under Paris sounds to some romantic or even incredible or historic, right? But the truth is that it's such a the Paris catacombs are such a dangerous place, and not only that, it's like where millions were put to rest. Like literally, and it carries such a heavy feeling, right? Which is why I feel like my tone definitely freaking changed right now, and it's just like this feeling again, like right here. It's just like I shouldn't be like, oh, yippity happity, whatever, right? when I discuss this. But yeah, definitely the setting here is more somber, right? I'd say. Oh, somber? Is that even the right word? Somber is like sad, right? Oh no, no, yeah, yeah. Grave, right? Yeah. I use somber for sad, but yeah. Anyhow, next up is like a farm horror story. It's a good old. I found this guy fucking trying to break into my thing story. Probably. I don't know. That's what I'd imagine this is. Let's read. A house in the middle of nowhere, a cornfield right outside. What could possibly go wrong? Right. So, typically, no one's seen like. I mean, it's really like I don't. Can farms be abandoned? I would imagine they don't just like spontaneously stop existing in some other entity, whether the government or like some fucking I don't know crazy other farmer fucking takes over the property. I would imagine that's what happens. But at the same time, it makes sense why there's stories of like people taking over farmland and like maybe wanting to start their farming dreams. Um, but yeah, these stories are also quite equally as dark, but they tend to be more on the fantastical paranormal route in contrast to the previous set of stories where well excuse me, not set of stories, the previous story where it's more rooted I guess in possibility, actuality. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not saying that these stories aren't real, that these farm stories upcoming well, we're gonna listen to one of them, right? So this upcoming farm story is not real. It's not what I'm saying. But like there's gonna be like a difference, right? For sure. You want to hear him? It hasn't started yet, right? This is muted. Oh my god.
It's
Yeah.
My wife Cheryl and I own a farm in Buckingham, Iowa, where we mainly grow corn. This was in August of 2018 on a slightly rainy night. Cheryl and I have both spent our entire lives in the farm life. It's really all we know. Of course, farm life in Iowa means lots of space and very few people. Our closest neighbors, George and Kenny, were each about half a mile away in opposite directions, also farmers. With not much else going on around here, it's easy to become friends with your neighbors. We often have George and Kenny and their wives over and vice versa. On this one otherwise normal weekend night, we had George and his wife over for drinks. We all got pretty drunk while playing board games. They left around 11. Luckily, it's a 30-second straight line of a drive home. We continued to drink some wine as we watched one of our favorite movies. We were starting to get tired. We were definitely feeling the effects of the wine. We were most likely just going to fall asleep on the couch cuddled up together when there was a knock at the front door. A knock at the door at this hour was unusual. In fact, it never happened before. But accompanied with the knocks, we thought we could hear a voice say something. I lowered the volume of the TV. We waited for it to happen
doesn't have much
again.
setting.
Like 20 seconds later,
That guy
another
lived
set
at
of
my
knocks
house.
at the door,
Again.
followed by a muffled voice saying we need help.
And it's raining.
I was about to get
Ooh.
up and open the door when Cheryl shook my arm, and I looked at her, and she made a face and shook her head no. I whispered, I'm just going to ask who it is. She replied I shouldn't let them know we're home, but odds are they already knew we were home. I went over to the door and asked, who is it? The voice on the other side said through the door, oh, thank God, can you open up? We're lost. I said, who's we? The voice said back, my wife and I. I replied, can your wife say something? There was a silence for a few seconds. I followed it up with, did you hear me? The same voice said back, yeah, but she's not next to me right now. This is where red flags started going off in my head. And I started to realize
that
the
is a
voice
red
sounded
flag.
little
Holy
off.
fuck.
like a man trying to make his voice sound a little higher. I laughed and said, "George, is that you?" George is a big goof, and him being drunk, it wouldn't be unheard of for him to do something like this. The voice said back, "Yeah," in a slightly deeper voice now. I almost felt relief, believing that it was actually George, but I didn't want to open the door just yet before confirming. Having someone knock on your door out here late at night claiming to be lost doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's not a thing, and it's an immediate cause for alarm. I said through the door, "Prove it, what's your wife's name?" A now unfamiliar voice said back, "That's a trick question." My smile disappeared. I went to get my phone and called George. Cheryl was watching the whole thing, telling me we should call the police. I said, "Hold on." The phone rang like 3 times before George picked up. Right away, I said, "Are you at my front door right now?" And he said, "No, why?"
Wow, yeah,
I told him
that's
there's someone at our front door trying to trick me into opening it. He said he'll hurry right over, and we hung up. Keep in mind, all of us were still drunk during this. There were knocks again at the door. I yelled, "I have a shotgun waiting for you if you don't leave here now." The voice said back, "We're just trying to use a phone, that's all we need."
Sure.
Cheryl called 911, which out here, it takes an extremely long time for an officer to arrive on scene. We heard footsteps walking around our wooden deck that wraps around the house.
Look at my hairline.
A couple sets of footsteps, actually.
Oh my god. I'm just
They
kidding.
stopped at one of our windows, which had the blinds closed, and we heard one of them attempting to lift the window
No,
open.
it's just like it's
This
just
caused
the
Cheryl, who was
perspective
still
it
on the
feels
phone with
off
911
right
to
now.
scream,
There we
"Leave
go.
us alone." I followed suit and screamed at the top of my lungs to get the fuck out of here or I'll shoot you. It took me that long to think to run upstairs to grab my shotgun from the closet. Literally a few seconds later, there were more pounds at the door, and this time it was actually George's voice yelling, "Open up." I let George in, who also brought his shotgun. He said he didn't see anything or anyone as he pulled up. He stayed with us until a
Interesting.
police officer came to the house. He did a quick little scan of the property with us, then left. We took heed of his advice in installing a camera in the front and back. Surprisingly, something we never thought of until this incident. Still gives me chills that all that was keeping out whoever was on our front deck that night was a wooden door.
That is scary. You said this is unrelated. It's really unrelated, right? Anyhow, now these last two they're gonna be unrelated. Let's begin with this. With extra history.
How long has it been since somebody created a piece of horror that really stuck with you? One that chilled you to the
Iron
bone
Lung?
and left you looking behind your shoulder, or made you pause before you turned off the lights at night? It's been some time for me. Most of the horror movies released today just don't really get to me. Even a great film like Cabin in the Woods, it's strong because it's a deconstruction rather
Yeah.
than because it offers us a real step into the darkness. And horror games have been trending further and further from that grim reflection of ourselves that we saw in the old Silent Hills or Fatal Frames. Some horror games have drifted toward the action-packed, zombie-stomping power fantasy side of things. Experiences which may be intense from moment to moment, but certainly don't qualify as true horror. Other horror
Exactly.
games, especially recently, have delved into the jump scare, hide from the monster type of experiences. Games which are very much about terror, but they aren't exactly what I'm talking about either. I'm talking about real psychological horror.
Yeah.
The kind that sticks with you long after the experience is over. PT is in many ways masterful, something we should talk about in its own right, but it stands as an exception to the long-standing rule.
Yeah.
So what's happened?
It's not even a full
At first, I
game.
thought perhaps it was just that I've grown old, that the terrors of my youth are but fancies in my age. But then I came to the realization, much of modern horror is actually created to make us feel safe.
Yeah.
Sure, it'll give us a jump scare here and there, it'll throw in some gruesome imagery, and it'll surprise us or fill us with disgust in the moment, but these feelings are meant to be fleeting. You're intended to leave the theater or put down the game and laugh about how silly you were to jump or to be frightened. You're supposed to feel powerful for not being scared, or for knowing that you can overcome that horror. You're supposed to go joke over coffee about how not scared you were, or snuggle up to a loved one. In general, you're supposed to leave the experience aware of how comfortably safe your real world is. And it's not that this is supposed to happen on a conscious level.
This video's
Often
actually,
only
like,
the best creators of this form
kind of
horror
on
are even
point.
particularly aware they're doing it. But insofar as
Our
this form
environment
of
is just
modern
like the
horror
social
works,
one, right?
It
Where,
works
like, how
because
we
it leaves
interact
you
in this
on
case.
some subtle level feeling safer about the real world we live in, rather
Yeah.
than leaving you scared of the possible world it created. Now, there's
Again,
nothing
I'm
wrong
stretching
with this
a few
kind of horror.
things.
I think it has its place, but it's not what
Uh-huh.
someone like James wants. And he will be the first to admit that perhaps he carries some damage with him. That wanting horror experiences to linger in one's mind long after the experience is over might be kind of weird. But it's what he looks for when he enters into a horror experience. He wants to feel that fear. He wants to know that side of himself. There are 1,000 ways to do this as we explore different sides of fear, some of which we've talked about in previous episodes, but today we're going to go into more depth talking about one, the uncanny.
Oh my
The
god.
uncanny is that sickly, creeping sense that something is wrong. It's this feeling that you can't shake, that gets under your skin. You can't put your finger on it, but something is out of place, or not quite right. Long ago, we talked about the uncanny valley, that place where a robot or a 3D model looks real enough for your brain to interpret them as being human, but something about them is just slightly off, enough so that it triggers a feeling of revulsion and disgust. That's sort of a microcosm of the uncanny in general. You ever wonder why a flickering light in an otherwise normal scene makes it so much more ominous? It's not even about fear of the dark. We get this sense even when we see a flickering light in an otherwise well-lit scene.
Exactly.
And it's not just the irritation of something flashing on and off either. Otherwise, we'd just be feeling annoyed rather than unsettled.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it doesn't belong there. Our brains understand what a normal house or a hallway looks like because we see them every day. On some subconscious level, we know that the flickering light is wrong somehow.
Also,
Any
his
well-maintained
voice is
place wouldn't have
very
such a thing.
annoying.
Thus,
I
it makes us
have
tense.
to admit.
It makes us feel like something is wrong in this room, and it makes us look.
Like,
for
I don't know.
whatever
Do you
else
all
might be
get
wrong.
that too?
It sets up that anticipation that horror pieces so desperately need before they throw the main scare at you. David Lynch is a master at this.
Yeah.
If you want a doctoral class on the uncanny, just watch Twin Peaks. Every scene, every line of dialogue, even the way the actors deliver their lines is stilted and unnatural, yet not so unnatural that you can resign it to the realm of fantasy. The reason we can so easily brush aside many of the monsters in modern horror is that they so clearly exist outside of anything we would accept in our real world.
Yeah.
And because they obviously can't exist in the real world, all you have to do is put down the film or the game and bam, you're safe. The true
That's the difference. And like, when it comes to like environments, right? Like, whenever we see a beach, we can recognize it as a beach. Whenever we see the sea, we see the sea. Whenever we see a forest, we see a forest. Whenever we see a farmhouse, we see a farmhouse, right? And we see farmland, and we begin to associate things we should see, right? Now, in games, they tend to like exaggerate the fuck out of things, right? Like, for example, and in certain games it makes sense, right? For example, games about the far future, of course they're gonna exaggerate how things look. Of course they're gonna have a more metallic sheen to things, unless it's dystopian, wherein everything looks dull and dark and crappy, right? um but I can see that point where basically in, I guess, like horror games, right? Like, they're right. He's right. Like, if you see like an absolutely big blob monster just like going like as if he's gonna fucking scoop you up and eat you, it's like it's almost, I wouldn't say, what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say rebellious. That's not the word I'm looking for at all. It's just not even uncanny. It's just doesn't make sense. That's, I guess, the phrase I'm looking
master
for.
of
Not the
horror's
word,
trick
but
is
yeah.
convincing us that their monster might exist in our real world, and the uncanny is a very good tool for achieving this.
Yeah.
If Gone Home got to you at all, it's because of the uncanny. There was nothing actually frightening in that game, but they intentionally tried to leave you with a sense of unease as you explored that house, and they used the uncanny to do it. These sorts of moments can be found in lots of games, usually in the environment design or the enemy models. Silent Hill.
A game that does this really well actually is Spooky's House of Jump Scare. This game is literally really good at that. It begins like, you cliche shit like, your little wah, right? Just like little jump scares like that, little cartoonish jump scares, and eventually evolves into a mess. As you can see, the game begins kind of like, where is it? Kind of like this, right? But then it evolves into something like, what the fuck is truly going on here, right? And that game does it well with the environment, right? But then you have other games that just like, how do I say it? They have like no build up. You're just put into a world, and you're meant to like just like roam it for like 2 seconds. Because like, see, a game that does well with that, with just putting you into a world, is actually Choo Choo Charles. Believe it or not, it's pretty good at that. And it also puts like a sense of like fear, right? Like something's off, something can jump at you at any moment, or like, oh, you can go up certain areas you just can't really do shit, right? Can't really go up down. That game's really good at that. But like when a game is just like 2 seconds you're outside and then like the rest of the stuff takes place inside, or just in one, like, not even dynamic, one static area, it just fucks up the like the horror formula. You know what I mean?
Hill 2 is perhaps the game most famous for playing on our sense of the uncanny. When you weren't in the other world, you were in a world just like ours, only subtly and horribly wrong.
Exactly.
There, the most disturbing moments usually weren't during combat with the monsters, but rather your encounters with other human beings in the town, who were just off in a way that you couldn't totally put your finger on, but boy were they unsettling.
Yeah.
In fact, I would go so far as to say that many of the best horror works in any medium use the uncanny as one of the key drivers behind the tension and release cycle that's so essential to horror. And we've never talked.
Which is why actually I kind of found this story to kind of work, right? It's just the animation, how like
just trying to fool you into thinking that's what it is. But it's so much more dangerous than that. I tried to take a step, but my legs wouldn't budge. My eyes were locked.
It's like, even though the animation's kind of like, how do I say it? It's not that it's rough. It's just like he probably uploads a lot, and it's probably his animation style. It's just like, it's just the way he kind of, because he has to draw scenes over and over and over again. You know, it's your typical shit, right? You gotta draw, and I don't know, maybe because I probably have the wrong perspective here. But the point is, like, you know, you can tell they're human, right? You can tell their emotions and shit like that. And there wasn't like a moment where, like, you know, you saw something weird in them. But it's also like the uncanny art style too, right? Like they're like kind of off. They're kind of like rigid, right? It plays well, is what I'm saying.
Talked about the tension and release cycle in horror before.
Especially how the monster was shown in that
PT
one.
is the perfect example too. You know what? Screw it. People, find yourself some more costumes. We're keeping this Halloween thing going. See you guys back here next week.
Anyhow, we're gonna start talking about this because
when it comes to
it's
horror
important.
games, there is an abundant number of ways to ruin the player's experience. In this episode of Creating a Great Horror Game, I'll be listing the 7 horror game developing sins.
Yeah.
Number 1, no excessive jump scares. The sin. Jump scares are the #1 tension and immersion breaker.
Yeah.
If there's any tension beforehand, jump scares will undo that tense feeling within a second.
Yeah,
Sure,
what
it
the
will
fuck's
make the player
happening
jump,
there?
and it can be entertaining to see for yourself.
This
But
is
doing
the
it
biggest
excessively
pulling of
can ruin your
sheets.
horror game's experience, because the player will eventually become desensitized by the repetitive cycle of tension build, jump scare, tension build, jump scare. How to avoid the sin. The best way to do this is just to wait until the end of the game, or in the case that the game is lengthy, as in over 5-hour long gameplay, feature a scare close to the end of some of the chapters. Think of it like coffee. Sure, you can down a 20-ounce cup of coffee in one day, and you'll feel like you can get things done at lightning speed.
Look at the environment; it's
But
so
the next day, your
dystopian
tolerance will
again.
have also grown an enormous
That's how it
amount
plays
within
well.
such a small time span, to
Yeah.
where you'll have to drink an even bigger cup, and eventually you'll just have a heart attack and die. Same thing with jump scares. Don't jump scare the player, or they'll die. If you overdo it or scare the player with a huge jump scare, the player will build a tolerance to the scares, and the game screws the atmosphere altogether, spoiling the experience. So scare the player in small doses. Don't load the game with jump scares. And honestly, sometimes it's just best to avoid jump scares altogether.
Yeah.
Number 2. Try not to be cliche.
Yeah.
The sin. It's painful to see games copy Five Nights at Freddy's or Sonic.exe's formula, because it's been done so many times. Both original games are somewhat neat ideas, especially Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, I too had a big fear of those animatronics from Chuck E. Cheese's as a kid, but the fear is long
never had
gone
that.
thanks to the numerous Five Nights at Freddy's sequels, turning it into a sensationalized, mediocre horror game series with the damn
Yeah, fuck yeah, brother, you hit that nail.
Currently working on a Five Nights at Freddy's horror game or .exe game. Scrap that shit.
Let's hear it one more time.
Game series with the damn same trope every game. How to avoid the sin. If you're currently working on a Five Nights at Freddy's sequel, he cheeses as a kid, but the fear is long gone thanks to the numerous Five Nights at Freddy's sequels, turning it into a sensationalized, mediocre horror game series.
Sensationalized, mediocre horror
With the damn same
series.
trope
That's
every game. How to avoid the sin. If you're currently working on a Five Nights at Freddy's horror game or .exe game, scrap that shit or turn it into a more comedic game, perhaps poking fun at the overused trope. The best thing to do, however, is to make the game with your own unique trope and theme, because that's what made these horror games you took inspiration from successful anyway. Now, I'm not saying it's bad to take inspiration from other games.
Yeah,
at
no,
all.
clearly
I
it's
just
good to
recommend
take
not
inspiration
an
from like
exact copy.
sources,
Try
like
not to
books
take
and stuff like
inspiration
that.
from just one game.
Yeah,
because it becomes way too obvious.
and
where
don't
you get your
just
ideas
only
from.
take inspiration
Number
from
3,
games.
do not
Take
get
inspiration
lazy
from the
with your
media
work.
you consume.
The sin. Something I find that happens to me.
You
when
know
I'm
what I
working
mean?
on an Amnesia
For example, if I had to make a game, it would have to be the many voices out there on the internet mocking you over and 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 over again, and turned into like a horror spin. I don't know, just kind of like, you know, where like the game is just like making fun of you, but at the same time also fucking scaring the shit out of you. You know, in a twist sort of a
mod is
way
that I'll lose
representing a
motivation.
character's psyche.
The worst
I don't
thing
know.
that I could do is continue. How to avoid the sin. Save and exit. The best thing to do when you get tired of working on your project is just to take a break. If that's not an option and you have some deadline, I'd recommend playing some other horror games to get inspiration and motivation. To
And then
continue
like,
working
you know,
on your
it gets
project.
annoying
Listen to
when
some
you just
horror
like,
music or watch a horror film while designing your games. But once again,
yeah, exactly. Watch a
if you
horror
have the
film at
option to
least.
take a break, do so.
Mhm.
Number 4, making the puzzles too easy or too hard.
Yeah.
The sin. Unless your game is advertised to be a hard, puzzle-focused horror game, I wouldn't recommend making frustratingly hard puzzles. The same can be said for puzzles way too easy for the player. If the puzzles are too difficult, it can make the player mad and take away from the experience. They might even quit.
Not only that, looking from a coder's point POV, why are you gonna fucking make yourself fucking code something like that in? Just like, dude, like, if like you have to code in like a fucking intricate series of fucking things, like, you know, like I have to code in the fucking lever. Of course, you're gonna have like a class lever, right, or whatever, or an object called lever or whatever, right? But what I'm talking about is like you have to like code yourself a portion of the game that's just like basically like a map script or something like that. That's just like a bunch of puzzles. Don't fucking do that. Just unless your game is puzzle focused, don't do that. Don't be like having like this one area of the game where like you go up to it and you just like fucking have to like do 10 hours of like fucking getting jump scared just to get like, oh, you gotta pull down the red lever, then you gotta push up the blue button, then 10 hours later of doing a bunch of shit, now I gotta put this rock here and bam, you can open the door.
Playing your game.
Don't do that. That makes for
easy,
bad
the
fucking
player is
game
going to
design
feel like
in
the game
general.
is holding their hand.
Or just
How to
design.
avoid the sin. You have to have a balance of difficulty and easiness, which can be difficult. I'd recommend designing some puzzles in your game and have several beta testers play through the game, and then you can see what the majority think about the difficulty of the puzzle. Number 5. Don't make your game unreasonably edgy or grotesque without a good reason.
Yeah.
The sin. Sometimes a really dark theme is appropriate to convey some message, but when a horror game's theme is too edgy and disturbing for its own good, it can end up ruining the player's fun and actually scare the player away from playing the game at all. A lot of smaller indie horror games also make the same mistake of having every level have at least one pool of blood or pile of guts. And the story in some of these games just go too far. Way too far just to get their message across.
For me, whenever I see that in a game, like a pool of blood or something like that, it's cliche to me because it's so overdone. Now, were it to be that maybe it happens once in the game, and some fucking weird event happens with that, or a well done event where like, oh shit, you find like the fucking main character's girlfriend got gutted out in the bathtub, and it actually, you understand why that happened and the motives behind all this, that makes kind of like a little bit of sense, I guess. But like, then again, you wouldn't like don't make a game into like torture porn, you know what I mean? Because like it's just awful. You don't want to see that. And me just saying that last sentence, the fucking about the girlfriend. Oh my god, I hate that.
Is it that people feel the need to make their
I feel
stories and
horrible for
levels
saying
so
that.
bloody and edgy just because it's a horror game?
Mhm.
Horror is not about how much blood and gore
Yeah.
you show to the audience. It's about the fear factor
Exactly.
and story. And let me tell you,
What the fuck
blood
is
and
this
guts
game?
got old with horror movies decades ago.
Yeah.
How to avoid the sin. I would recommend to try not to focus on gore or edgy writing and focus
Mhm.
more on man's prominent fears, like
Yeah.
the fear of the unknown. Not revealing
Exactly.
everything, keeping the story and monsters mysterious and in the shadows. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
and not
I'll have
like
to use
all
amnesia as an
fucking frontal. The reason I guess Slenderman works, for example, is that it stalks you quite literally, right? The reason why Slenderman's minions work is because you can tell they don't necessarily like go after you like like 24/7. They kind of like stop chasing you after a while, but like literally it revolves around the setting. It revolves around like the events of the game, and it also revolves around kind of like just what these creatures are supposed to entail and represent, right?
example again. The reason Amnesia the Dark Descent is so creepy is because most of the lore behind the characters and places like Brennenburg Castle itself are shrouded in complete mystery. Nobody knows exactly what the monsters are, or when Brennenburg Castle was first built, or its original
Yeah.
purpose. Sure, there are theories on who the gatherers are and all, but we don't know anything for a fact.
Oh my god, Amnesia
We
would be
only let our
one fucking
imagination
hell of a
roam,
game to play through.
and our
I would
minds can
fucking
think of
hate
scarier
that
things
game
than someone
because it's
else's
been a
story
fucking
on their own. The
hell
only time you should
of
write
a
an
long
edgy
time since I've
story is
seen
when you're trying to
anything
convey
related to
some dark
Amnesia and how it
message.
works.
And even then,
So I remember
I'd
watching a
recommend
bit of
sticking to
PewDiePie's Let's
strictly
Play and
creeping
like
out the player, not grossing them out.
all I remember
or
is that
greatly
fucking
disturbing
weird
them.
creature with
Number
the fucking
6,
ripped
bad
ass
gameplay
face.
mechanics. The sin. You can of course apply this to any genre of video games, but with horror games, immersion is a big factor.
Yeah.
And frustrating, clunky gameplay mechanics throw the
Like
player
that.
right out of the experience. Frictional Games' Penumbra Overture has fallen victim to this. Thomas Grip, co-founder of the company, purposefully made the combat in the game clunky so that the player would flee as first resort, fight as last. But he realized when the player got any chance to fight back, they would. Due to the clunky combat, the majority of players who decided to fight first, flee later, were thrown out of the experience because of how clunky the combat
the
was.
fuck?
And that is why the second episode to the Penumbra series, Black Plague, had no combat. How to avoid the sin. With horror games, keep the gameplay simple. The Dark Descent had no HUD, and the player indicator for low health or sanity was purely from screen effects.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you viewed it on the inventory screen. The inventory was also simplistic. You had your slots, health, sanity, display on the numbers of tinderboxes you had, and the journal. To mix two items during a puzzle, all you did was click and drag item A to item B. Number 7, predictability. The sin. One of the greatest horror game sins is reusing the same methods to scare the player to where it becomes predictable. This one is hard because many horror books, movies, and games have overused the same formulas to scare the audience. One of the most common ones is they build tension, have a false scare, rest, build tension again, and have an actual scare.
Yeah.
How to avoid the sin. Avoiding predictability is tough. The best way to avoid it is by researching what has been done to death, and then formulate your own way of scaring the player. If you are a horror game developer, comment on what hasn't and has worked for your players. If you wish to join the survival horror game cult, hit subscribe, but most importantly, hit the notify bell icon and make sure to have it always
when you make a
notify you
game,
when
I
my next
guess you
upload
do
is
want to get a
published.
cult following,
Take
but at
this
the same
knowledge
time, it's
given
kind of
unto you
weird.
and
I don't
spread
know.
fear among the masses, and we shall gather once again next sundown. And remember, the most believable things
What is
are
that?
instilled with fear.
The fuck is that? A bat? Yo, 6 hours. Fucking sick. So yeah, that's it. So that's it to our environmental stream. Now let's get down to business. I'm just kidding. No, imagine. Yeah. I bit my fucking lip on accident, and I'll tell you something so weird. So let's see. Literally, the reason I made this is because I wanted to have a more environmental message earlier on the stream, right? Like, obviously, I can't do much. I can't be like, oh, guys, let's donate to like Ohio or whatever, East Palestine. It's just literally impossible. I don't have the money. Nobody has the money. Um, at least when it comes to like, us individually. I mean, we all contributed like $5. Yeah, it would work out. But like at that point, it'd be like, or is our money going to like the right place? You know what I mean? So there's stuff like that. So like, the my moral and message for this whole stream is, we gotta take better care of our environment. Um, straight up. Otherwise, we can literally end up living in a dystopia, like our video games portray, right? Um, where there's war, where there's meltdowns, where there's global warming running and ruining our societies. Running. It's because I was gonna say, running rampant. But like, yeah, literally, are you scared of the moth, man? Oh my god, I'm gonna watch this on my own. I'm gonna watch this on my own. You all ain't watching this on stream because it's. Well, it's because he also has to do with the environment. So, like, the point is, I'm watching that on my own. I'm fucking done. I'm fucking done, dude. Dunzo. But straight up, we gotta take care of our environment, right? A lot of stories from the past and present too. And something I didn't get into have environmental messages. Right? If you all want to read more into that, there's that. That's something I could have gotten into. Literally, what's this civilization? Mayans, yeah, overpopulation. At least for back then, because they were actually crowded, believe it or not. But yeah, there's a lot of issues, right? And at the same time, I also wanted to focus more on the purely aesthetic, um, portions of this, because the environment is important, but there's also imagination as to like what occurs behind the environment, right? Like, for example, with the Skinwalker stories, it's just like people putting like themselves in, not maybe the story, but maybe putting some sort of character in a story where they see something wrong with their environment and the Skinwalker just represents corruption, or just, you know maybe evil, or not evil. It's because they are literally evil, right? But like, what I mean is like some sort of like other thing that's just trying to like get at them, right? At the same time, environment, we can see the environment as a hostile place, um or even both, right? There's a lot. Sorry, go on. Uh-huh. I know my points are just so fucking bad today, because sorry about that. Dr. DF, Dr. DC. Oh, you have a weird name. I cannot pronounce that. Usually I say people's names, and it's because, like, on Twitch they have like weird usernames usually. Like, I remember one of them. It was like so fucking bad. Yeah. Oh, something. I'm the hacker. I'm gonna run out what that says. Well, actually, what is that text? That says help. Yeah, no, I was just done covering the scary stream. There's like, all this stuff I covered. It's more of an overview rather than like a true scary stream. Because like, if it was like a true scary stream, I would have like this. Right, I would have. Are you afraid of the Mothman? This video I'm watching on my own because I'm tired. I'm done. I streamed 12 hours, I think. I'm just kidding. Hold on. 3 hours, 46 minutes. Yeah, I'm done. I would have like this stuff. Usually, I don't know what next month's theme is gonna be. I'm planning on making the next scary stream like March 11th. It's once a month, but I don't remember what fucking. If there's a theme, I don't think there is. I think it's just gonna be random horror. Ever heard of the Michigan Wolfman? Yes, I've heard of him. There's a lot. There's a lot of stuff. There's those Obrelobos and stuff like that. Well, yeah, we're done because I got today's focus is like the environment, right? Again, just to reiterate and recap, and I feel like I hit almost every note, and also like when it comes to like this stuff from like how we literally convey ourselves in Antarctica, like we should honestly treat these cases in Antarctica better and stuff like that. Because like environments seclude ourselves and make us run cold and crazy and stuff like that doesn't mean we need to act out and like fucking go out there and fucking hurt other people, right? And also it doesn't mean that we can face no consequence. Game keyboard app for Among Us at face emoji. Nice. Came out all wrong. But yeah, so like I guess like let's see. We covered like real world issues. We covered the I guess somewhat like imaginative how we view like the environment, right? And then the more what was it again? Like the scary stories and stuff revolving around the environment and the use of environment, right? Although it's more like tropes in horror. So yeah, thank you all, everybody, for coming by. Thank you to Lay Monster Music for coming by, and everybody else that came by. Like DFRDCVBHFDC. There we go. Thank you so much for coming by, and you all can view the VOD or whatever. God, I'm out of it today. Ugh. Seriously, I've been streaming for a while. Let's see. Let's actually let me add up the time. I kind of want it to end at 4 hours, but like I'm done. It's literally like tomorrow I'm gonna be doing homework. I gotta wake up early anyways. 6 hours 45 plus 340. That's 9, 10 hours. Yeah. Good night, good day, whatever it is again. And yeah, bye everybody. I gotta go to bed and wake up and do a fuck ton of exercise tomorrow. Bye and good night.